Back at the June family, he had said something similar after he suddenly attacked and taught June Moxie a lesson. Now, these words were practically repeated back to him. Even a deity would be driven mad by the irony of these words. Mu Shuetong, who had been standing next to him at the time, suddenly realized that this man had come to vent his anger on June Mocie's behalf. He wasn't afraid of harming innocent people as he had said. After all, in the eyes of a master like Tian Xian, harming or even killing an ordinary person by accident was not a big deal. However, if this senior really had a good relationship with the June family, then it would be of great help to the June family, Wu Yi, and even the young lady. In fact, it would be a great thing. However, the sixth elder's life was truly unlucky today. First, he had ridiculed June Wu Yi, and had been severely injured by the solitary falcon. Then, he had taken advantage of his seniority to teach June Mocie a lesson, and had been humiliated twice by the masked man. Moreover, he had been slapped twice in the face for no apparent reason. Moreover, he knew that he would never get the opportunity to take revenge for these two humiliations in his lifetime. So, it was quite difficult that he hadn't died of anger even now. Sixth brother. The third elder cried out in alarm and hurriedly rushed over. Shen Xian's pure Xian Qi was transferred to the sixth elder. At the same time, his Xian Qi suddenly activated something on the sixth elder's chest. The sixth elder's chest suddenly emitted a soft white light that enveloped his upper body. The third elder breathed a sigh of relief and stood up. He could tell at a glance that the sixth elder's qi and blood had collapsed under the attack of anger. He was already in a very dangerous situation. If he didn't rescue him in time, he was afraid that he would die before he could even return to the magnificent jewel hall. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and immediately acted. A spirit Xian expert had been angered to death by someone else. But, this was an unprecedented way to die. He won't die yet. The black-masked man's eyes flashed as he looked at the soft white light on the sixth elder's chest. It was like a dense white fog, and his eyes revealed a look of, "I knew it." Lenglang said, "There is a cause and effect, and there is a natural cycle of retribution. Since you can humiliate others, then you must be prepared to be humiliated by others." Today, the Silver Blizzard City doesn't have a match for this old man. So, let's stop here. If you still don't accept this, then you can invite experts from the Silver Blizzard City to cause trouble for me. People in the pugilistic world can't help themselves, but there is no door to fortune or misfortune, and people can only bring it upon themselves. I don't know what will happen next, but the Silver Blizzard City's great elder will make a decision soon. The third elder slowly stood up, and his eyes were filled with indignation. "I ask Senior to bestow a name upon us, so that we can give an explanation to the Silver Blizzard City." An explanation? If it weren't for the fact that I've calmed down in recent years, do you think that you juniors would be able to leave this place alive? The black-masked man laughed heartily. Suddenly, his body started to fade in front of the third elder, and then reappeared in front of the sixth elder. He stretched out his hand, and seemed to have taken away something. Then, he disappeared like a mist. Then, an illusory voice was heard, "Go back and ask Han Feng Shui." He forcibly separated a pair of lovers, and disregarded his granddaughter's happiness. Didn't he feel very happy? Ha ha ha. The laughter gradually dissipated, and the person disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the boundless curtain of night suddenly descended upon the earth, as if the black-masked man had taken away the last bit of light between heaven and earth. "Senior, please leave behind the Shao family's soul-replenishing jade." The third elder shouted, but there was no reply. The mysterious black-masked man had already melted between heaven and earth. Before the black-robed man left, he grabbed the jade pendant that was originally tied around the sixth elder's neck and snatched it away from the air. This jade pendant was a treasure that the other two families of the Silver Blizzard City didn't possess. To the people of the Shao family, this was something even more precious than their lives. This was a strange warm jade that the ancestors of the Shao family had found in the collapse of a snowy mountain. Even if one's heart were to be shattered, this jade could protect the wound, and bring the person back to life. To a Xian expert, this was equivalent to a protective talisman. This piece of jade had been cut into 3 pieces, and only the people of high status in the Shao family were qualified to wear it. This time, the 6th elder had been given 1 piece to wear because of the descendant of the Shao family, Shao Fengwu, and the little princess, Han Yan Meng. After all, no matter which of these 2 people, they couldn't afford to have any mishaps. However, they hadn't expected that this piece of jade would be snatched away before it could even be used. Who would have thought that this kind of peerless expert would act like a street thug, and covet other people's belongings? That's too ungentlemanly. I've never seen such a peerless expert. Moreover, he's always talking about his own status. He's like a hermit sage. But, his personality is so despicable, and his methods are so despicable, too despicable. The 3rd elder fiercely spat on the ground. Even I wouldn't have snatched it if it were me. What he didn't know was that if this black-clothed expert hadn't felt the aura of the soul-replenishing jade, no matter how angry he was, he would have no choice but to seek revenge in the future. He wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to come out and swindle people. That was because this peerless expert would have been exposed if any one of them had made a move. He would have fled with his tail between his legs. Moreover, he would have fled as fast as he could, and as far as he could. The 3rd elder suddenly felt at a loss. In any case, he was a member of the Silver Blizzard City's upper echelon. He was the 3rd elder of the Silver Blizzard City's upper echelon. Although he didn't know much about what had happened in the past, he would still stand firmly on the side of the Silver Blizzard City regardless of what had happened in the past. However, it seemed that one of the 8 great masters, the solitary falcon, had already decided to stand on the Jun family's side. Moreover, the solitary falcon was certainly difficult to deal with, but he wasn't unrivaled. However, this mysterious expert had suddenly appeared today. His last words clearly indicated that he was on the side of the Jun family. This mysterious expert's strength was too frightening. It was so frightening that the 3rd elder felt hopeless. Just the fact that he was able to move without a trace was enough to make anyone's hair stand on end. It was simply too mythical. The Jun family might have been weak before, but they couldn't be underestimated now that they had the support of these 2 experts. Moreover, the complicated relationship between the Jun family and the Silver Blizzard City was even more troublesome. The Shao family would never allow the Jun family to rise. They had tolerated the Jun family in the past because they were too weak. So, they didn't deserve to be taken seriously. Another reason was that the Silver Blizzard City had reached an agreement with each other. But because of this matter, the Silver Blizzard City had been in harmony for hundreds of years. However, this was the first time that the Shao family had been divided. So, the Shao family would spare no expense to eliminate the Jun family now that such an opportunity had suddenly appeared in the Jun family. Even if the lord of the city didn't allow it, the great elder wouldn't be able to stop him from making this decision. Provoking the solitary eagle wouldn't be a big deal if the great elder acted rashly. But, provoking the mysterious expert might provoke the Silver Blizzard City into an unrivaled enemy if that happened, and this mysterious expert, looking at his behavior, was actually a person who would do anything to achieve his goals. Since ancient times, this kind of person was the most difficult to provoke. If this shameless person had the martial power to be almost invincible in the world, then, it would be an extreme headache for the 3rd elder. The 3rd elder heaved a deep sigh as he was filled with anxiety. Yesterday, I was depressed for a while. Among the people who came to congratulate me, there were a few 18 or 19 years old boys. They seemed to be the children of distant relatives. Then, they started talking about Qidian's novels. They even mentioned the evil monarch and battle god. I was very excited, so I joined in the discussion. After a while, they asked me, "Do you also read Qidian's books?" I said, "Yes." They asked me, "Do you have an account in Qidian? What's your ID?" I said, "Of course, I have an account. I'm a high V account. My name is Feng Ling Tian." They looked at each other for a while. Then, one of them suddenly stood up and shook hands with me. He said, "Nice to meet you. I'm the third young master of the Tang family. The one on the left is I Eat Tomato. The one on the right is dreaming of a divine weapon." Then, the three of them burst into laughter. They slapped their thighs and buttocks. Chapter 229. Mu Shuetong and the little princess Han Yen Meng had different thoughts. Both of them were happy for Jun Wui and his sister, Han Yen Yao. The two of them had been separated for 10 years, and had suffered for 10 years. Now that they had the help of such a strong person, they believed that it was only a matter of time before they were reunited. How could they not be happy? Upon returning to the magnificent Jewel Hall, the first thing that the third elder did was to write a long letter detailing all the events that had transpired over the past few days, regardless of whether it was a big or a small matter. Moreover, he emphasized his own opinions on the solitary falcon's appearance and the mysterious expert, and tactfully put forward his own opinions on the matter. After writing a dozen or so pages, the third elder released the eagle, and then stood alone on the roof of the magnificent Jewel Hall, and silently looked at the gloomy sky. The more he looked, the more he felt that a storm was coming, and couldn't help but sigh endlessly. If this storm were to break out, who knows how many people would die a violent death. Especially now that there was the Silver Blizzard City's Shao family's soul-replenishing jade. This was a treasure that absolutely could not be lost. The Shao family would take it back at all costs. However, this piece of jade was in the hands of the mysterious black-masked man. How could they take it back? Even if they could take it back, the entire Silver Blizzard City would have to face off against such a strong person, and it would certainly be a situation of mutual destruction. In the end, how many people would be left alive? At the same time, two more eagles soared into the sky and flew towards the Silver Blizzard City. These were the little princess and Mu Shuetong's information, and they were both sent to the same person, Han Yen Yao. That beautiful and pitiful girl had sacrificed her youth in exchange for the existence of the Jun family. Who knew how excited she would be when she received the news of her beloved? What? Xiao Han's angry roar came from below. Jun Wui's poison has healed. How is this possible? How can he be healed? Bastard! I will not allow it. The third elder closed his eyes. Xiao Han, it was because of you that year. What are you going to do now? As the curtain of night fell, the Tianxiang city's #1 gang, the Jinyang gang, started to gather their men from all directions, and started to rush towards the headquarters. Previously, the headquarters of the Jinyang gang had issued a general summoning order, Golden Sun illuminates the world, which only the gang leader had the right to issue. Not only was this order something that only the gang leader had the right to issue, it also meant that the Jinyang gang was facing a critical moment of life and death. This was the first time that the Jinyang gang had issued a general summoning order. Even when the headquarters was almost destroyed by the unfathomably powerful eagle-nosed elder, it was not issued. It wasn't that Jin Fenglai didn't want to issue the summon order, but the old man's strength was too terrifying. It wasn't something that could be dealt with using numbers. Even if he released the token, the result wouldn't change. It was better to just look for his brother Hai. However, things were different now. A blue-clothed man was standing there with his hands behind his back. He looked as calm as the ocean and as motionless as a mountain. He had the aura of a powerful master, and his whole body gave off the aura of a surging ocean. It seemed that he was quietly waiting for the arrival of the Jinyang gang. The leader of the Jinyang gang, Jin Fenglai, was sitting on one side with a serious expression on his face. He could feel that his brother and benefactor had changed a lot, whether it was his attitude or his demeanor. He was brimming with a domineering aura and a desire to control. This was completely different from his previous attitude of being completely indifferent to the worldly affairs of the mortal world. Perhaps, the Jinyang gang would change in the hands of his brother Hai. If this wasn't the case, why would he issue the "Golden Sun illuminates the world" summon order? Seeing that the Jin Yang gang's 4 hallmasters and 12 branch lords had arrived, Jin Fenglai stood up, and clapped his hands a few times. The crowd suddenly quieted down, and everyone looked at him, waiting for him to speak. Today, I have issued a general summoning order to gather all my brothers here. I have an important announcement to make. Jin Fenglai's cold eyes slowly swept over everyone's faces. From today onwards, our Jin Yang gang will welcome our new leader. This is also the first step towards unifying Tianxiang's underworld. Everyone knows Hai Chen-feng, so I won't introduce him. Originally, Hai Chen-feng and I were inseparable, and his position in the Jin Yang gang is transcendent. But from today onwards, Hai Chen-feng will take a step forward, and become the leader of the Jin Yang gang. As for me, I will step down and become the first protector. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd became deathly silent. Jin Fenglai quietly waited for a while after he had finished his announcement, and seeing that no one had responded, he slowly opened his mouth. I don't know if any of you brothers have any different opinions. Hai Chen-feng was still standing with his hands behind his back as he spoke, and his eyes were fixated on the row of memorial tablets on the incense table in front of him. These people were the founders of the Jin Yang gang, and now, they have all become memorial tablets. I have an opinion. A burly man stepped out from the crowd. I don't know why elder brother has made this decision. Brother Hai's martial arts are peerless, and his skills are superb. We admire him, but becoming the leader of a gang isn't something that can be done with just martial arts. Isn't it better to be a guest of the gang like before? Why do you have to carry out such a solemn transfer of power? To put it bluntly, Brother Hai's position in the gang is transcendent, and his authority is even greater than that of the gang's leader. Why do you have to go through so much trouble to become the leader? At present, the capital is filled with experts from all over the world, and it can be said that a storm is brewing. The major families are also getting restless, and have already asked us to attach ourselves to them, the Murong family, the Li family, and the Song family. Lord Luo, in your opinion, if I become the leader of the gang, how far will I be able to take everyone? We can't afford to provoke any of these families. The Jin Yang gang is the #1 gang in Tianxiang City, but any one of these families has the ability to destroy the Jin Yang gang in the blink of an eye. What can I do for the future? Jin Fenglai sighed. I can't afford to provoke them, but there are others who can. Brother Hai is fully capable of shouldering this heavy responsibility, and can even lead our brothers. We don't need to look at the face of any family, nor do we need to be a lackey of any family. We can continue to survive, and continue to raise the banner of the Jin Yang gang. However, although Brother Hai has the title of a guest of the Jin Yang gang, it is still not a legitimate title. Therefore, I have decided to give up my position to Brother Hai. Now, do you understand? The burly man's lips squirmed, but he remained silent for a long time, and then finally retreated. I have an opinion. A thin man squeezed in. Leader, how many of the current gangs in the capital don't attach themselves to the nobles? Leader also said that if we don't attach ourselves to the nobles, then even a gang as strong as the Jin Yang gang will only be able to survive in the cracks, and may even be in danger. Since that's the case, why don't we simply choose a family? As long as we make an agreement, and divide the benefits as reasonably as possible, then we may not necessarily become dependent on a certain family. This way, we will have a strong backer behind us, and our brothers will also have someone to talk to, whether it be in the court or in the wilderness. Isn't that better? Why do we insist on stubbornly guarding our foundation, and provoking attacks in vain? In your opinion, which noble family is the most suitable? Hai Chen-feng clasped his hands behind his back, and didn't turn around, but his voice floated over in a low tone. In this subordinate's humble opinion, the Mu Rong family and the Li family are both very suitable. The only thing that isn't suitable is that struggling to survive on your own is a very unwise move. The thin man said in a loud voice. The azure figure suddenly turned around, and it seemed as if the waves of the sea had suddenly surged up violently. Bang! The thin man was hit in the chest by Hai Chen Feng's palm, and his internal organs immediately ruptured. His body was sent flying far away, and his whole body was still in the air when it suddenly split into pieces, and died without a complete corpse. A real man is born in this world, and yet he has to rely on others to drag out an ignoble existence. Living like this is worse than death. Hai Chen Feng suddenly turned around, and looked at the crowd with a heavy expression. If you want to live, then live to the fullest. Cowardly people don't deserve to be brothers of the Jin Yang gang. People who have secretly accepted benefits from others don't deserve to stand here. Now, tell me, who else has any objections? Brothers who are willing to share life and death with me, and create a better future for the Jin Yang gang, can take a step forward. Hai Chen Feng ordered Lenglang, and his hawk-like eyes swept over the faces of the crowd. From now on, I, Hai Chen Feng, am the new leader of the Jin Yang gang. I will give you tomorrow to consider, and if you want to leave, then leave. If you want to stay, then wait here. After tomorrow, the Jin Yang gang will have a new beginning. When the time comes, no one will be able to violate the rules of the gang. Those who violate the rules will die. Hai Chen Feng had finally shown his aggressiveness, and his ruthlessness. Even if the thin man hadn't accepted any benefits from others, but if he were to raise any objections, Hai Chen Feng would still use him to establish his prestige. Bloody means were indispensable for the transfer of power. He could only blame his bad luck. The curtain of night had fallen, and the crowd silently dispersed. Everyone couldn't help but shudder when they saw the corpse of the thin man, and hastened their footsteps as they left. Hai Chen Feng had finally taken over the Jin Yang gang. The next step would be to expand to the periphery. Hai Chen Feng had finally taken his first step. This was also the first step that Jun Moxie had requested, to unify the capital's gangs. And this was only the first step. By the time Jun Moxie returned to the Jun family's residence, the lanterns had already been lit. The young Master Jun was in a very good mood on the way back, because he had not only retaliated against the sixth elder, but had also obtained a mysterious jade pendant. However, the ability of this jade pendant had yet to be explored by Jun Moxie. However, the Hongjun Pagoda had been very active ever since the appearance of this jade pendant, and this had convinced Jun Moxie that this was by no means an ordinary jade pendant. He faintly felt that this jade pendant wasn't a jade pendant, but rather an unknown substance. Jun Moxie tossed it into the Hongjun Pagoda after he had obtained it. Upon returning home, Jun Dashao was surprised to find that the solitary eagle, was waiting for him in Jun Wui's study. Why did this old man come back? Moreover, he had a very unhappy look on his face. No one in the Jun family had dared to provoke this old man, so who could have caused him to behave like this? Chapter 230. Today's breaking news. Emergency. Requesting assistance. All for the glory of the brothers and sisters who support the evil monarch. Brothers and sisters, please support us. The evil monarch's position requires us to work together, begging for monthly votes. The solitary falcon's spittle almost sprayed onto Jun Mo Xie's face. Damn it. You deceived this old man into staying at the Jun residence with your flowery words, and it turned out that there was such a big trap hidden inside. First there was the Silver Blizzard City, and then there was the Shuehun Manor. You bastard. Do you think my old bones can handle such a big thing? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Tell you earlier? Jun Dashao blinked his eyes as the corners of his mouth twitched. If I had told you earlier, then you would have been in the prairie by now. Would you have stayed here to help me? Do you really think that I'm stupid? You. The solitary falcon was extremely depressed. Yes, you're not stupid. Not only that, but you're extremely shrewd. I'm stupid. The great Master Falcon wouldn't have needed to weigh the pros and cons of this trap if he hadn't seen the young Master Jun's eagle formula that day. Perhaps he would have left without any hesitation. However, he had seen the young Master Jun's unrivaled technique. So, The Great Master Falcon wasn't willing to retreat even if he knew that he would have to face the other two Great Masters. What a joke! How could such an opportunity be obtained so easily? Not to mention the fact that this kid has a matchless expert behind him. Although he knew that the opposite party was telling the truth, he still felt uncomfortable in his heart. Being used by a junior to this extent, who would feel comfortable in their hearts? That would be like seeing a ghost. Although the harvest was indeed great, but, besides, this kid's words are too direct. It really makes this old man angry. "Hey kid, when will your master get here?" the solitary falcon asked. This old man wants to discuss the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor with him. The solitary falcon might even throw the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor to the back of his mind if that expert really appears. "My master?" Jun Moxie blinked his eyes. He travels the world freely, and his whereabouts are uncertain. How would I know when he'll come? He's always been the one looking for me. I don't have the time to touch him. Don't tell me I have to shoulder this alone. Solitary Eagle's eyes widened as he felt a chill run down his spine. Why are you alone? Jun Moxie's eyes widened in bewilderment. Solitary Eagle was delighted. Who else? Are you talking about your third uncle and your grandpa? Although they are not weak, they can't get involved in the fight for Xinxian. Are they friends of your master? How powerful are they? What are you thinking about? I mean, don't you still have me? Jun Moxie pointed at his chest and said with an unyielding expression. I will fight alongside you. You brat, you're nothing. Solitary Eagle was enraged. Even a fart can make a sound. You're not even as good as a fart. They can kill you with a single breath. The Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor have more than 10 Supreme Divine Xian experts on their side. This old man's two fists can't deal with 4 or 5 of them at the same time. So, what about the others? How can you protect the Jun family? Just do your best. Jun Moxie rested his chin on his hand and said in a deep voice. I'll K your grandmother. Solitary Eagle was so angry that he blurted out vulgarities. Just do your best. Where do you have the strength? You're really shameless. Solitary Eagle had the urge to turn around. Don't worry, we'll cross the bridge when we come to it. Jun Moxie tried to comfort him. What's the rush? What if I can't cross the bridge? What if there's no way out? Solitary Eagle glared at him, as if he wanted to swallow him whole. I've never seen such a heartless and useless person. Then just hit him. Jun Dashao's words made Solitary Eagle so angry that he almost fainted. You bastard, can you even hit him? Solitary Eagle blew his beard and glared at Jun Moxie angrily. Facing such a mischievous guy was like a dog trying to bite a hedgehog. There was no place to bite, and he was only making his liver hurt. I definitely can't hit him, but don't I still have you? Jun Moxie rolled his eyelids. You are one of the 8 great masters. So, even if the sky were to collapse, you would still be taller. So, you would be able to hold it up with a gentle lift of your hand. I believe that you would be able to turn it upside down as long as you hit it with all your strength. Even if you can't kill them, you'll still be able to injure them. You hit him first, and then I'll fill in the gaps. Wouldn't that be an advantage for me? Solitary Eagle was exasperated. He suddenly realized something. Coming here and waiting for this kid was a huge mistake. This guy actually had this kind of idea. He planned to let him be the cannon fodder first, and then he would fish in troubled waters. How can there be such a despicable and shameless person in this world? He has really reached a certain level. This old man has really opened his eyes today. You brat, do you know anything about the Silver Blizzard City? Solitary Eagle angrily stood up, and wanted to leave. Staying with this brat is making things difficult for me. However, he still wanted to warn him before leaving. Do you know anything about the Shui Han Manor? Even if you do, how much do you know? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and you're talking nonsense. You brat, you'll die sooner or later, and you won't even know how you died. Solitary Eagle wanted to leave after he finished speaking. Of course, he only wanted to go to the third Master June's courtyard to rest. After all, the young Master June hadn't finished learning all of his skills. So, he wouldn't leave even if someone tried to drive him away. However, this time, it was June Dashao's turn to be unhappy. June Dashao had seen Solitary Eagle's aggressive appearance before. Therefore, he hadn't given him a good look. However, Solitary Eagle's tone indicated that this great master should know a lot of inside information. This would be very useful to him. Therefore, June Dashao couldn't help but feel excited, and wanted to extract more information from him. How could I not know? However, the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor may be arrogant, but how could they be compared to the genuine 8 great masters? What a joke! June Dashao's flattery was seamless. His face was full of sincerity and honesty, so, don't look at me as if I don't care about it. In fact, anyone would be the same. Think about it, the Solitary Eagle is one of the 8 great masters. So, what do I need to be afraid of in this world? Haha. I'm full of confidence. Solitary Eagle was just about to take a step forward when he suddenly realized something. I was wondering why this kid was so confident. It turns out that this old man has given him this illusion. But, what he said seems to be reasonable. There's really nothing to be afraid of in the presence of one of the 8 great masters. No wonder. The burden of fame. Solitary Eagle sighed in his heart. My unrivaled fame has given this kid such confidence. No wonder he's jumping up and down without a care in the world. He even dares to talk back to the Silver Blizzard City's great masters. However, it's not good to maintain this kind of mentality for a long time. Solitary Eagle pondered for a moment. Then, he suddenly realized that the June family would relax their guard because of his presence. In case the Silver Blizzard City or the Shui Han Manor were to attack, then wouldn't I be harming the June family instead? I can't do anything about it. My reputation is too resounding. Young June, this old man is one of the 8 great masters. But, this old man only has the strength of one person. There's a limit to a person's strength. Solitary Eagle's tone had softened a lot. He was ready to enlighten this confused and lost sheep. His voice was sighing, but his tone of arrogance was undisguised. It was evident that June Dashao's flattery had a considerable effect. I've also thought about this. June Moxie spoke in an honest and sincere manner. You see, the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor both have a great master. But, I don't think that those 2 great masters would lower their statuses to deal with our June family, right? As long as the great masters Feng Shui and Zhu Tian don't get involved, then, do you think that there's anyone else in these 2 places that you can't deal with? I don't think so. The Solitary Eagle nodded and smiled. You're right. Apart from Han Feng Shui and Li Zhu Tian, everyone else from the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor are nothing in my eyes. Even Shen Xian's men are no exception. They can't even withstand a single blow. The corners of June Moxie's mouth twitched. This old man. I gave him a bamboo pole, and he actually went along with it. He's intoxicated, but, is this the time for you to be intoxicated? Don't let your guard down. This is a matter of life and death. So, quickly wake up. Yes, what else do we need to be afraid of? Even if they gather together and attack us at once, we'll still be able to suppress them as long as you're here. You're our June family's stabilizing force, an unbreakable pillar. Perhaps we can even defeat them in one fell swoop. It'll be like a stone striking an egg if you make a move. It'll be as easy as blowing off dust. No, I can't do that. The Solitary Eagle was arrogant and unruly, but he wasn't arrogant enough to think that he could single-handedly fight against the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Han Manor, with the exception of the 2 great masters. The remaining forces can't be underestimated. It'll be difficult for me to deal with them alone. I'm afraid it won't be difficult, right? It'll be impossible to match them. Jun Dashao almost vomited. But, he forced himself to hold back, and revealed an innocent smile. I think, you can do it. Just like today. Didn't everything calm down the moment you made your move? You only needed 1.5 moves to take care of a master like Shen Xian. Wouldn't everything be settled if you made another 3 or 5 moves? The solitary eagle's heroic spirit soared. He stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly paced back and forth. His eyes were full of excitement, and his face was solemn as he calmly said, "Don't talk nonsense. Don't underestimate the enemy. It's over, this old man doesn't want to come down." Jun Dashao was somewhat flabbergasted. "I've already said so much. Why don't you come down from the stairs? Why don't you tell me about the specific situation of the two big forces? You're still immersed in intoxication." "Sir Great Master, you're indeed a great master, but you're a man, shouldn't you have some face?" Chapter 231. Seeing that the solitary eagle was still immersed in it, Jun Dashao lost his patience, picked up a question that he wanted to know the most, and asked it bluntly. It seemed that this guy in front of him was not a person who knew what was called a roundabout way. Beating around the bush with him was tantamount to showing his charming eyes to a blind man, and it would be a waste of effort. It was better to go straight to the point, and meet him with bare blades. "Who told you that Shen Xian is the supreme martial artist? The highest cultivation?" The solitary eagle rolled his eyes, looked at Jun Moxie, and was a little unhappy. He was in the midst of showing off his valiant and heroic bearing as he single-handedly traversed between the experts of the two great forces, but was suddenly interrupted by Jun Moxie. It was as if he was about to climax, but had to stop the battle. Instantly, he felt somewhat dispirited. This is simply misleading the students. How can a mere Shen Xian be the highest realm? What a big joke. Oh. Then, is there a higher realm above Shen Xian? You tell me, let me broaden my horizons. Jun Moxie pretended to be stupid, but in fact, he really did not know. Is Shen Xian not the supreme martial artist? Then what does the supreme martial artist Shen Xian mean? Idiot. The solitary eagle was angry, and with a strong sense of impatience. Shen Xian is Shen Xian, the supreme martial artist is the supreme martial artist. Understand? The so-called supreme divine Xian is nothing but a false rumor spread by mediocre people. It's a complete mess, a complete mess. Oh. Jun Moxie opened his eyes wide. Mysterious Qi is the most magical martial art in the world. The solitary eagle's expression became serious, as if he was on a pilgrimage. Jun Moxie laughed contemptuously in his heart. Mysterious Qi is the most magical martial art? So what if my art of unlocking heaven's fortune is 1,000,000 times stronger than Xian Qi? Mystical Qi can slow down aging, increase one's physical strength, and extend one's lifespan. When cultivated to a high level, it can even move mountains and seas, and summon wind and rain. The solitary eagle's eyes were filled with fanaticism. How can it only be used to kill people? Move mountains and drain seas? Call the wind and summon the rain? Jun Moxie jumped to his feet. This time, he was really surprised. Jun Dashao's eyes almost popped out, and his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little. The solitary eagle said proudly, but there's an obvious example right in front of us. That mysterious master of yours burned down 60 acres of maple forest with just a wave of his hand. TSK, I believe he's already seen the door of this kind of godly skill. Oh. Jun Moxie sat down like a deflated ball. Fuck, he actually deduced it from this. Xian Qi, those below the 9th level are ants. This saying is both right and wrong. The solitary eagle said, those below the 9th level are completely useless. They're not even qualified to be compared to ants. The correct way to put it is, those below the Shen Xian are ants. There aren't many people in the world who can be called human. June Moxie said gloomily. They're all ants. Above the Shinxian, there are the 12 levels of Shinxian. The people of the secular world only call them beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. This is a big fallacy. The solitary eagle smiled proudly, as if he was looking down on the world. Shinxian is the 12th level, one step at a time. Shinxian is the 12th level, one step at a time. June Moxie repeated in silence. He asked, what does that mean? From Tian Xian onwards, there are 12 levels above the Shinxian. From the first level to the 12th level, the advancement of each level is as difficult as ascending to heaven. The difference between each level is like heaven and earth. That's why I said that Shinxian is the 12th level, one step at a time. The solitary eagle snorted and said, the 12th level is the level above the Shinxian. In my eyes, only those who enter the 12th level of Shinxian can be considered as real people. And the 12th level of Shinxian is the division of levels among the strong in the Shinxian. Those below the Shinxian are not qualified to know. They're not qualified to know. Then what level are you at now? June Moxie asked curiously. My old rival, Feng Wanyun, and I are both in the 5th level. Among the 8 supreme martial artists, our levels are the lowest. The solitary eagle was a little dispirited when he said this. 5th level. I don't know if I can break through to the 6th level in my lifetime, sigh. Below the 5th level is the Shinxian level, above the 5th level is the supreme martial artist. The so-called supreme Shinxian means, to be called a supreme martial artist, one must first reach Shinxian. Shinxian might not be a supreme martial artist, but the supreme martial artist is definitely Shinxian. The 5th level of Shinxian is the first step to ascending to heaven. After a huge breakthrough at the 4th level, one can ascend to the level of Shinxian. At the 5th level, one has the heavens perception, and one has the ability to establish his own sect. With a new understanding, one can vaguely borrow the power of heaven and earth for one's own use. This is the realm of the supreme martial artist. Those below the 5th level have yet to understand the ability to borrow the power of heaven and earth. Therefore, even if one is at the peak of the 4th level, it is only Shinxian. Not a supreme martial artist. Then, Yunbi Chen and Li Ju Tian must be the 12th level of Shinxian? June Moxie felt as if a whole new world had appeared in front of him, and he couldn't help but feel as if his horizons had been broadened. Definitely not. The solitary eagle shook his head, but he didn't give a reason. June Moxie asked again, but the solitary eagle didn't say anything. After a long time, he said, Yunbi Chen is at the 8th level of Shinxian. Any higher is impossible. The 12th level of Shinxian comes from an ancient legend. According to Shinxian's realm, there are 12 levels. Every 4 levels is a big stage, and the bottleneck between the 4th level and the 5th level is the 5th level, and the 8th level is the 9th level. Take the 4th level and the 5th level as an example. Although there is only a difference of 1 level, the difference in strength is like heaven and earth. This is the so-called difference between Shinxian and a great master. Since he had already decided to tell the young master June about the mysteries of the spirit Xian, the solitary falcon decided to explain everything in detail to him. So that's how it is. Then, what is the realm above the 8th level of Shinxian? Since Yunbi Chen is only at the 8th level, does it mean that if someone reaches the 9th level of the 8th level, that person would be the best in the world? Jun Dashao was very concerned about this matter. He believed that the young master could reach the Shinxian's realm in 3 to 5 years' time with his rapid progress. Therefore, he was very interested in the realm that the 8 great masters hadn't reached. The realm above the 8th level of Shinxian is a whole new world. Even I don't have the qualifications to know about it. In this world, only Yunbi Chen, Li Ju Tian, and that person from Tian Fa have the qualifications. Of course, your master isn't limited by this limit. In my opinion, your master's level is definitely higher than mine. This old man rarely admires anyone in his life. Even if it was Yun Bichen, this old man has the confidence to chase after him. But, this old man can't help but admire your master's realm. The solitary eagle sighed and stood up. He then pulled out a jar of wine from under Jun Moxie's bed, opened the seal, and gulped it down. It seemed as if he was drowning his sorrows in wine. So, there's such a strange division of strength. Jun Moxie let out a sigh of relief. It turned out that the division of strength in this world was so strange and cruel. One didn't have the qualifications to know about such things until they reached that realm. There was no need to explain the reasoning behind it. Even though the 12 grades of immortal Xian were closely divided, there were actually veins that could be followed. It was just like the earth before he had transmigrated. Even though everyone was equal on the surface, the internal hierarchy was extremely strict. Ordinary people at the bottom would never understand the matters of the upper echelons. Although the foundation was different, the principles behind it were the same. What he had heard from his grandfather or his third uncle were only ordinary rumors. Perhaps he knew a little more than the others, but his knowledge would never exceed the level of a Sky Xian expert's knowledge. But, what he had heard from the mouth of the solitary eagle was a whole new world. So, would he be able to reach a higher realm in the future after coming into contact with Yun Bichen or other people? They were at the same level as the solitary eagle. But, they were a few steps ahead of the solitary eagle. So, it wouldn't be surprising if they had new understandings. So, where is the peak of this world? Jun Moxie was lost in thought. He had forgotten to feel sorry for the 10,000 silvers he had spent on that jar of wine. So, do you know anything special about the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor? Jun Moxie raised his head. His eyes were shining brightly. This old man can only say that your Jun family is very bold. And, your luck is also very good. The solitary eagle sighed. He felt a little depressed as he mentioned this matter. So, he couldn't help but glare at Jun Moxie. It's very strange. Your Jun family is a worldly family, but you've managed to survive in the face of an existence like the Silver Blizzard City. This is no small miracle. The solitary eagle shook his head. Let's not talk about the Shuehan Manor. But, the Silver Blizzard City isn't something you can afford to provoke. This old man would have walked away if I didn't know that your master was behind the Jun family. I wouldn't have accompanied you in this crazy business. That would have been akin to courting death. Ah. No matter how attractive you are, it's only meaningful if you're alive. The solitary eagle sighed with emotion. He didn't know anything. And, he had been led into a hornet's nest. This was truly depressing. Is the Silver Blizzard City really that powerful? Do we really not have the slightest chance of winning? Jun Moxie frowned. He was somewhat puzzled. The strength of the three elders from the Silver Blizzard City was similar to that of Xinxian. But, they weren't that strong. So, he believed that the solitary eagle would be able to deal with them by himself. So, why is he taking this matter so seriously? Is he trying to raise his own status? Jun Dashao had a malicious thought in his mind. The 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders aren't worth mentioning. But, the problem is that you've provoked the Silver Blizzard City's Shao family. This is tantamount to a direct confrontation with the Silver Blizzard City. Do you understand the difference? The solitary falcon looked at Jun Moxie with pity in his eyes. He sighed, and thought that the ignorant were indeed fearless. Chapter 232. This is related to a secret. It is said that 300 years ago, there was a large faction in the world called the Supreme Alliance that ruled over half of the world's underworld factions. Their prestige and strength were unparalleled and could be said to be unparalleled under the heavens. Whether it was a peerless expert or a Xinxian expert, upon seeing the symbol of the Supreme Alliance, they would have to take a detour. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. The solitary eagle continued slowly. The young master of the Supreme Alliance, Yu Lin Feng, met a woman by chance. That woman was as beautiful as a painting, and she was called the Nine Heavens Jade Phoenix, Kong Yen Luo. At that time, she was publicly recognized as the #1 beauty under the heavens. Yu Lin Feng was excited to see his prey. He used all kinds of methods and countless experts to get his hands on Kong Yen Luo, but to no avail. When Yu Lin Feng saw that he couldn't win the heart of the beauty, he finally decided to kill her. He exterminated the Kong clan to get his hands on the beauty. But at the last moment of Kong Yen Luo's life, 3 people suddenly appeared and rescued her. She fell in love with the eldest of the 3, and they became husband and wife. On that night, Yu Lin Feng was besieged by the 3 of them, and his head was separated from his body, and he died a violent death. Jun Moxie's heart stirred. Why was the story of the solitary eagle so similar to the matter of the Shui Han Manor and Guanqing Han? The eldest of the 3 was called Han Xiaoyao, the second was called Xiao Xingchen, and the third was called Chu Duanxiang. They were all top heroes of the world at that time, peerless martial arts geniuses. From the moment Han Xiaoyao rescued Kong Yen Luo and killed Yu Lin Feng, the 3 brothers became irreconcilable enemies with the Supreme Alliance. The Supreme Alliance's leader, Yu Zhanyun, issued a strict order: the 4 of them must be killed at all costs. Thus, a calamity began to unfold. The 3 of them knew that it was impossible for them to fight against the Supreme Alliance with their strength alone. In a battle, the 4 of them were no match for the Supreme Alliance, and fled far away, their whereabouts unknown. But what no one knew was that the 4 of them went to an extremely cold place, and concealed their identities, plotting a future plan. These 4 people established their own forces at the peak of a snowy mountain in the land of extreme cold. They are the 3 founding ancestors of the Silver Blizzard City. They are also the founding ancestors of the Han family, the Shao family, and the Chu family. 20 years later, the 4 of them had achieved great success in their cultivation and gathered a considerable force. They decided to find trouble with the Supreme Alliance. It just so happened that the Supreme Alliance was stirring up the world and had reached the point where the heavens were angry and the people were resentful. When the 4 of them took the lead, everyone responded. The heroes of the world gathered together to fight against them. In just 3 years, the Supreme Alliance, which was once the strongest force in the world, collapsed and was completely erased from the world. But in the final battle, Han Xiaoyao and Yu Zhanyun were both like arrows at the end of their flight. When they unleashed their last move, they were already powerless to resist. But at this moment, the second city lord of Blizzard's Silver City, Xiao Xingchen, used his heavily injured body to block Yu Zhanyun's sure-kill attack on Han Xiaoyao and perished together with Yu Zhanyun. At that time, Xiao Xingchen's cultivation was already above Han Xiaoyao's. His Xian cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, and he only needed one more step before he could ascend to the top of the world. He had a beautiful wife and a young son at home. It could be said that he was in the best years of his life. But for the sake of his sworn brother, he resolutely died. His face was still calm even at the moment of his death. It was clear that he was a heroic hero. Han Xiaoyao grieved over the death of his sworn brother, and let out a long howl that shook the heavens. In a short period of time, his hair and beard turned white, and he brandished his sword in front of everyone. He cut off 2 of his fingers, and blood flowed out. In front of the heroes of the world, he made a blood oath: as long as the Silver Blizzard City exists, the descendants of the Shao family will never die. The teachings of our ancestors have been passed down from generation to generation, and we will never break this promise. The solitary eagle seemed to be a little emotional. As he spoke of this brotherly love, his voice became a little fierce. Jun Moxie let out a heavy sigh. He finally understood what the solitary eagle meant. The Jun family being able to survive until now was truly a stroke of luck. The Shao family may not be the family of the Lord of the Silver Blizzard City, but the Shao family's words are extremely important in the Silver Blizzard City. This is something that no one can change. Moreover, the lords of the Silver Blizzard City had always treated the descendants of the Shao family with a doting attitude. Do you understand now? As long as the June family faces the Shao family, it's the same as facing the entire Silver Blizzard City. This fact will not change. The solitary eagle let out a long sigh, and gulped down a few mouthfuls of wine. Then, he sighed and said, "Forget about Han Xiaoyao, even I would be happy to have such a brother in my life. I, the solitary eagle, would also disregard life and death for the sake of such a brotherly love." But it's precisely because of this that saving the June family from the hands of the Shao family is truly difficult. Even I am helpless in this matter. I really don't know how your third uncle's woman managed to do it. The solitary eagle sighed. Then, he said in a lonely tone, "But I'm sure that no matter how that girl did it, the process must have been extraordinarily difficult. That girl is very bitter, ah." The solitary eagle turned his head to look at the dark night sky after he finished speaking. Then, he looked up at the sky, and his eyes revealed an indescribable and complicated expression. It was very distant and very painful. It seemed as if he was thinking of something from the past, so that's how it was. Jun Dashao let out a long sigh. His heart felt heavy for a moment. This was the first time that the hitman Jun, who had lived 2 lives, felt that this matter was very thorny. The Jun family had suffered a series of major changes. Several of the Jun family's mainstays had lost their lives, and had almost been unable to recover from this setback. The only survivor, Jun Wui, had been crippled in both his legs, and had felt that there was no hope of ever being cured. Although the Jun family's father and son were filled with resentment, but they were helpless to do anything. After all, the arm couldn't twist the thigh. However, the Silver Blizzard City's Shao family had already made a move against the Jun family in the past. So, how could they have stopped halfway? Why didn't they cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? The Shao family had given up on that day, so there must have been a reason behind this. And this reason was 100% tied to that pitiful woman. Han Yenyao. Who knew what Han Yenyao had sacrificed in order to save the Jun family? How much effort had she put in? Who knew what kind of miserable life that pitiful woman had been living alone in the snowstorm city all these years? It was true that the Jun family was suffering, and it was certainly miserable. But, how easy could that woman be? Although the Jun family and the Silver Blizzard City's Shao family had an irreconcilable enmity, but Han Yenyao, that respectable woman, had also saved the Jun family's life. I must get Han Yenyao out as soon as possible, and reunite with my third uncle so that the lovers can finally be together. The hitman Jun suddenly felt a sense of impatience. He had come to understand how Jun Wuyi had gone through these past 10 years. Jun Wuyi's face had always been calm and tranquil. But, he had hidden so much pain and helplessness. Jun Dashao could imagine Han Yenyao's efforts. So, how could Jun Wuyi, the third Master Jun, not think of it? He would only think deeper, further, and worse. He had implicated his entire family in a moment of passion. If it weren't for the fact that his 2 brothers had passed away, and if it weren't for his father, Jun Wuyi would have cut his own throat a long time ago. Forcing himself to live under these circumstances was definitely 10,000 times more difficult than dying. And 10,000 times more painful. Moreover, he had a woman who had sacrificed herself for him. His beloved had been waiting for him in a distant place, and had been silently sacrificing herself for a little bit of hope. How could this be endured? Jun Wui's shoulders were shouldering a pain that even the hitman Jun couldn't understand. This was a burden that no one could share. Under such circumstances, he had to drag his crippled body to live for the sake of his father, for the sake of his family, and for the sake of his descendants. This in itself was a heroic act. Death was actually very easy, a single stab would suffice. But forcing himself to live on meant that he would have to suffer 1,000 stabs in his heart every day and night. Staying alive wasn't easy. Old Eagle, You just said that you're at the 5th level of the Spirit Xian realm, and that you're at the beginning of the Great Master realm. It seems that advancing to the 6th level of the Spirit Xian realm isn't as difficult as advancing from the 4th level to the 5th level. However, advancing to the 6th level isn't going to be an easy task. In fact, it might even be an extremely difficult obstacle for you to overcome. Is that right? Jun Mo Xia clenched his teeth, and his gaze deepened. The solitary falcon had never heard Jun Mo Xia speak in such a heavy tone that he had never used before. Solitary Eagle instinctively felt that these words of Jun Moxie seemed to contain some kind of absolute power and unquestionable determination. He couldn't help but be startled in his heart. He slightly raised his head, and his pair of eyes suddenly became as sharp as a sword. The reason is like this. What do you mean by this? You brat. What do you want to say? Just say it. When they were joking a moment ago, both of them were laughing and scolding each other. But now, both of them knew that the other party wasn't joking at all. Instead, they were speaking in an unusually serious manner. Even the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became tense. It was as if an earth-shattering bow had been pulled open in the middle of the dark night. The arrow was already on the bowstring. My master is obsessed with refining elixirs. A few years ago, he had a chance to research a very special elixir. Jun Moxie's eyes were fixated on Solitary Eagle's eyes, and he didn't even blink. This elixir requires countless elixirs and heavenly treasures, and the refining process is even more difficult. But once it is successfully refined, it has the ability to upgrade a person's rank. It ignores the promotion of one's rank, and there are no side effects. Do you understand what this means? Solitary Eagle looked at him with eagle-like eyes, and didn't move for a long time. Jun Moxie didn't continue speaking until here, and just calmly looked at Solitary Eagle. Solitary Eagle undoubtedly needed this elixir. Moreover, it was an urgent need. When a person reaches his own limit, and there are still many people in front of him, and he may not be able to catch up to them, it will give birth to unwillingness in his heart. Otherwise, Solitary Eagle, a dignified great master, would condescend to ask a little kid for advice on martial arts. This is irrefutable evidence that Solitary Eagle has been stuck at his limit for a long time, and is eager to break through. If this world really has this kind of elixir, then Solitary Eagle, or not only Solitary Eagle, but any strong person in the world would spare no effort to obtain it. The next thing to discuss was undoubtedly the conditions. Both of them understood. Even if this elixir really exists, Jun Moxie would never give it to Solitary Eagle for no reason and no price. Chapter 233. Solitary Eagle would have to pay a huge price if he wanted to obtain this elixir. And Solitary Eagle was well aware of the price he would have to pay. Therefore, the rest of Jun Mo Xia's words did not need to be said. Both of them were well aware of it. Four pairs of eyes looked at each other. Both of them had a calm smile on their faces, but they were secretly competing against each other. They were competing to see who would be the first to open their mouths. A long time passed. The solitary falcon suddenly shook his head and laughed, and then sighed. I can only say that each of the conditions you've proposed is too tempting for me to refuse. Not only do I not want to, but I also can't, and you really know when to advance and when to retreat. At such a young age, your willpower has already reached such a high level, it's really amazing. I, Solitary Eagle, have traveled all over the world, and have seen countless people, but I've never seen a little monster like you. But there's always a chance, and you've met one today. Because this time, you've miscalculated. Oh. Hitman Jun's expression didn't change in the slightest, but he slightly raised his eyes. The elixir you're talking about is a great temptation, and I believe that no one in the world can resist it. If I can advance from the 5th level of the Xinxian to the 6th level of the Xinxian, then I, Solitary Eagle, will be reborn, and my strength will multiply. I can't deny that this is indeed an irresistible temptation, Solitary Eagle smiled proudly, but even if it's an irresistible temptation, it's impossible for me, Solitary Eagle, to bow down to anyone. Even if your master were to propose this condition to me, it would still be impossible. Because I'm Solitary Eagle, the god of the prairie. Solitary Eagle's eyes flashed with an unruly flame, and he sneered, I will only be the overlord of the sky, and will never be anyone's slave. No one is an exception. Such boldness. June Moxie applauded lightly and smiled. Perhaps Eagle Deity has misunderstood something. When did I say that I wanted Supreme Eagle to be someone's slave? I don't think I've ever asked you to agree to any conditions of mine. Am I right? Hee hee. June Brat, I've underestimated you. However, when you said those words, although your expression, voice, and even the look in your eyes did not change, do you dare to say to your own conscience that you did not have such a thought just now? The solitary falcon said in a somewhat sarcastic tone. You are the kind of person who will do anything to achieve your goals. Once there are benefits, the first thing you pursue is to maximize the benefits. I'm confident that I'm not wrong about this. June Moxie was silent for a long time. Had he really underestimated the masters of this world? He had lived 2 lives, and ever since he reincarnated, everything had gone according to his wishes. Today was the first time he had been rebutted by someone whom he was confident he could control. June Dashao finally smiled bitterly and said, Eagle Deity is right, I've always been this kind of person. You're not wrong at all, but that was then, and this is now. Since you don't agree, I'll keep it to myself. But I can still help you increase your cultivation, but I need you to do something for me. If you agree, I'll immediately inform my master and ask him to gather the ingredients and start refining the medicine. What is it? Why don't you tell me about it? The solitary falcon didn't show the slightest bit of excitement, instead, he seemed somewhat vigilant. After spending time together, Solitary Eagle already knew that it was harder to get any benefits from this little fox than to reach the heavens. Even though the benefits he could give were absolutely genuine. But if he didn't ask for enough, he would definitely not release the eagle until he saw the rabbit. Therefore, Solitary Eagle had no choice but to be cautious. If he wasn't careful, he would be in trouble. I only request that you lend me a helping hand if the June family decides to attack the Silver Blizzard City one day, and seek revenge on the Xiao family. Then, we'll settle our grudges, and we'll find a way to rescue my third aunt. June Moxie's eyes shone brightly, I'm only going to rescue her. Solitary Eagle pondered for a long time, and paced back and forth in the room a few times. Finally, he gritted his teeth and made up his mind, fine. Just this one thing. It's a deal. June Moxie smiled. But, that's at least a year from now. The 1-year agreement is still valid. The solitary falcon smiled proudly, if this had happened within a year, then I wouldn't have needed that pill. Because if it's within a year, I'll feel ashamed. But if it's after a year, I must have it. June Moxie's lips curled into a genuine smile for the first time, that's right. Solitary Eagle's temper was exactly what June Moxie had been insisting on for a long time. He would never take advantage of anyone. But, no matter what, he would never be at a disadvantage. Solitary Eagle carried the 2 jars of wine and left. June Moxie took out the strange jade from the Hongjun Pagoda and looked at it for a while. But, he couldn't figure out what it was, so he put it back in. However, June Moxie could clearly feel that the Hongjun Pagoda's aura had suddenly gained a refreshing vitality after this piece of jade had been placed inside. Moreover, the spiritual qi had also become much denser than before. Moreover, the strands of spiritual qi had wrapped around this strange piece of jade, and hadn't dissipated for a long time. June Moxie hugged his knees as he looked at the moon outside the window. I must find a way to get those 3 kinds of spirit herbs as soon as possible so that I can upgrade my grandfather's rank as soon as possible. If things go wrong, I will have a better chance of escaping alive. This is the first thing I must do. Secondly, the matter of alchemy was also imminent. Be it Solitary Eagle or Jun Wui, both of them needed to increase their strength as soon as possible. It was the same for him. Also, he couldn't neglect the Tianfa forest. Thirdly, Hai Chen-feng must be urged to carry out the unification of Tian Xiang's underworld forces as soon as possible. Therefore, he had to grasp all the developments in the Tian Xiang city in the shortest possible time. Things came one after the other, and none of them were easy to deal with. Hitman Jun frowned in contemplation, and was at a loss as the moon gradually sank to the west. Under the light of the oil lamp, Jun Dashao's figure looked exceptionally lonely. On top of the wall of the small courtyard, a faint white shadow suddenly appeared and looked at Jun Moxie, who was deep in thought in front of the window. Under the flickering light, Jun Moxie's tightly furrowed eyebrows were particularly clear. It was obvious that this delicate and pretty boy was racking his brains for the future of his family, and was racking his brains day and night. After a long time, this beautiful figure faintly sighed in pity, and disappeared in a flash. Only a wisp of a faint fragrance was left behind. Jun Wui, who was separated by a courtyard, was leaning against a chair in front of the window with his eyes slightly closed. His rigid face was bulging slightly, and his mouth was unconsciously clenching his teeth. His sword-like eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, and every fine line of his muscles was showing a deep desolation. In the dead of night, Hai Chen-feng's entire body was covered in a blue light that rippled like the sea. He floated out of the courtyard, and shouted towards the dozens of experts of the Jin Yang gang, Lengleng, begin the operation. I want to see the results before the sun rises tomorrow. Everyone didn't make the slightest sound in response, but they raised their weapons in unison, and raised them towards the sky. The soft moonlight reflected off the cold blades, and imperceptibly dyed them with a layer of gloomy luster, just like congealed blood. Inside the Li family's mansion, a few silhouettes lightly leaped over the wall in groups of two, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Tonight was going to be a bloody night in the Tianxiang city. The Spirit Dragon Gang, one of the 6 big underground gangs of the capital, could be considered to have ushered in a disaster today. Although the 6 big underground gangs of the capital were ranked higher and lower, there wasn't much of a disparity between the specific forces of each gang. Even if the Jin Yang gang was ranked first, and the Northern City gang was ranked last, the Jin Yang gang was stronger, but not by much. At the very least, the Northern City gang didn't have the overwhelming strength to completely subdue the Jin Yang gang. Therefore, there was an unwritten tacit understanding between the 6 big gangs. Even if there were conflicts between the 6 gangs, they couldn't involve annexation. Otherwise, the other gangs would band together and attack them. Therefore, the 6 gangs were able to coexist in a relatively peaceful manner. However, this afternoon, the Spirit Dragon Gang received a reply from the Jin Yang Gang. During this period of time, the situation of the 6 big gangs was getting more and more difficult. Countless forces of the imperial court and aristocratic families were constantly nibbling away at the original sphere of influence of the underground gangs. In fact, the Northern City Gang, which was ranked last among the 6 big gangs, had been annihilated by the imperial court's leader, Old Master Tang, in one fell swoop. The underground gangs couldn't find a single clue as to what was going on. They couldn't help but feel anxious, and couldn't think of a solution. Therefore, the Spirit Dragon Gang took the lead and proposed an alliance, hoping that they could help each other in the same boat. The main target of this alliance was naturally the Jin Yang Gang, which was the strongest of the 6 big gangs. Unfortunately, the alliance was proposed at the same time that Solitary Eagle was wreaking havoc in the Jin Yang Gang. At that time, Jin Fenglai was under pressure, so how could he have the time to deal with such a matter? Therefore, the matter was temporarily suppressed. Today, the Spirit Dragon Gang suddenly received a reply from the Jin Yang Gang, and was overjoyed. However, after reading it, the gang leader Long Dahai tore the letter into pieces. This was a letter asking the Spirit Dragon Gang to surrender. This was too arrogant. The 6 big gangs had existed in the Tianxiang city for more than 10 years, and had never heard of a gang surrendering to another gang. The 6 big gangs had always been on equal footing, so what kind of thing was Jin Feng Lai? Why did he dare to ask us to surrender? Long Dahai was seething with anger, and immediately gathered the leaders of the gang to discuss countermeasures. Everyone was so excited that they wanted to fight to the death with the Jinyang gang. Some people even clamored that they should take this opportunity to annex the Jinyang gang, and make the Spirit Dragon gang their own boss. However, some people were calm, and suggested that they should take their time to think about it. Just as they were quarreling fiercely, suddenly, the door of the hall exploded into pieces of wood. The wood shavings flew in all directions, causing everyone's faces to burn with pain. Several people's faces were cut open, and they were dripping with blood. Everyone was furious, and looked towards the door. A burst of blue light flashed in the dark of the night. The sawdust fell, and a man stood outside the door. He was dressed in blue, and his body was glowing with blue light. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he was standing in the doorway like a mountain. The lights in the room reflected on his eyes, and they were as blue as the sea. Tian Xian Master. The Spirit Dragon gang had discerning eyes, and they couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the appearance of a Tian Xian Master. Tian Xian Master. The Spirit Dragon gang members felt a chill run down their spines. Dare I ask who you are? Long Dahai's beard trembled as he quickly stood up, and asked in a respectful manner. The Jinyang gang will soon rule the capital's underworld, and you have 2 choices, surrender, or die. The blue-clothed man's eyes were cold, and there was an inexplicable majesty in them. He slowly swept his eyes over the crowd, and spoke in a sharp tone. Chapter 234. Hai Chenfeng and Tian Xian's murderous aura made everyone from the Spirit Dragon gang feel a chill run down their spine. They felt as if they were standing naked on a snowy peak in the middle of winter. The cold wind was like a knife, cutting their skin inch by inch. The chill penetrated deep into their souls. This murderous aura was enough to freeze everyone's fighting spirit, will, and even soul. It was an irresistible and terrifying strength. Long Dahai's face turned extremely pale as he faced Hai Chenfeng's imposing manner. He felt as if the man before him was a magnificent mountain, while he himself was just a rock at the foot of the mountain. He didn't even have the qualifications to look up to him. He didn't know why, but he inexplicably retreated 5 or 6 steps. He felt his breathing become a little smoother, and then he felt his back hit something. He then realized that he had been standing in the middle of the hall, but now he was leaning against the innermost wall. What kind of pressure is this? Who are you, Your Excellency? This is a matter between the Spirit Dragon gang and the Jinyang gang. Why do you want to interfere with our affairs? Long Dahai gathered his courage and asked in a stern voice, where is the leader of the Jinyang gang? Where is Jin Feng Lai? Since you have the intention to annex the Spirit Dragon, why hide your head and show your tail? Show yourself. His voice was loud, and it seemed somewhat dignified. However, there was a distinct tremor in his voice. This sentence, which was supposed to be a reprimand to raise his own aura, sounded more like a plea to others. I am the current leader of the Jinyang gang. When did I ever hide my head and show my tail? Hai Chenfeng raised his eyes, and looked straight at Long Dahai's face. His murderous aura instantly shrouded Long Dahai's body. Long Dahai was shocked. His cultivation was at the early stage of the Earth Xian realm, and the two of them were separated by a dozen steps. But, he felt as if he was facing Hai Chenfeng face to face. The opposite party's gaze was so intense that his eyes felt like they were burning and hurting. The feeling of impending death was so clear. Although the hall was densely packed with members of the Dragon Spirit gang, Long Dahai felt that there was no one around him. None of them could bring him any sense of security. In such a huge space, it was as if he and the tyrannical black-clothed man were the only ones facing each other. An unrivaled and irresistible feeling of decadence rose from the bottom of Long Dahai's heart. Long Dahai only felt that his knees were sore and weak, and his whole body was drenched in sweat. He suddenly had an urge to kneel down and submit. Hai Chen Feng's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He suddenly waved his hand, and his blue cloak fluttered in the wind. Suddenly, the sound of a rising tide was heard. It sounded as if 10,000 horses were galloping. It seemed as if they were on the horizon a moment ago, but in the next moment, they were right in front of their eyes. From the horizon, he arrived in front of them in an instant. Kill! Suddenly, a loud roar erupted from outside. Hundreds of people roared in unison, and the sound of disorderly footsteps could be heard. The stream of people rushed in like a tide. Everyone had a sword in their hands. The shadows of the people on the walls flickered. Archers stood on all four sides of the walls, and aimed their bows at the members of the Dragon Spirit Gang. The dark arrowheads glittered with a cold light under the illumination of the bright lights. It seemed as if the god of death was grinning fiercely, and revealing his sharp teeth. The Dragon Spirit Gang's spies, guards, and spies had been wiped out by Hai Chen Feng. Those who submit will live, and those who resist will die. I'll count to 3. If Long Dahai and his subordinates don't respond by then kill them all. Hai Chen Feng's eyes were cold and emotionless. He slowly stretched out his right hand, and a blue light shone as he bent his first finger. 1. The members of the Dragon Spirit Gang panicked, and looked towards Long Dahai for help. Gang leader. Everyone's voice seemed to be pleading. 2. Hai Chen Feng didn't show the slightest bit of hesitation. His complexion was cold as he bent his second finger. Long Dahai's face was deathly pale. His lips opened and closed, and his eyes were filled with despair and helplessness. Archers, get ready. Hai Chen Feng raised his arm, and the sound of a tsunami was heard. It seemed that he was furious. Roar! The surrounding archers responded in unison, and pulled their bows into the shape of a full moon. As soon as Hai Chen Feng said, 3, 10,000 arrows would be fired. Death was imminent. Resisting would only lead to death. So, the only option left for them to survive was... Wait! Long Dahai roared, but his voice sounded as if he was crying, I am willing to submit. As he spoke, Long Dahai's entire body was like a deflated balloon. He instantly became soft. Following this order, everyone in the hall threw down their weapons. Their faces were covered in cold sweat. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders, as if they had been granted amnesty. Good. Hai Chen Feng praised, since you've surrendered, we'll be a family from now on. Great protector. You'll be responsible for settling the Dragon Spirit Gang. Yes, I'll obey the gang leader's orders. A tall and sturdy figure stepped out from the shadows. He had thick eyebrows, curly beard, a lion's nose, and a wide mouth. It was Jin Feng Lai. Jin Feng Lai, you. Long Dahai pointed at him in disbelief, and was at a loss for words. Ha ha, it's me. Is it surprising that I'm abdicating my position? Jin Feng Lai laughed heartily, and seemed very carefree. To be honest, Jin Feng Lai really didn't mind Hai Chen Feng usurping his position as the gang's leader. Not to mention the friendship between him and Hai Chen Feng, it didn't matter who became the gang's leader. Besides, Hai Chen Feng becoming the gang's leader would only benefit him and the Jin Yang gang, and wouldn't cause any harm to them. How awe-inspiring. How baleful. You've subdued an entire gang with just a few words. You've left me in awe. A Sky Xian expert is truly extraordinary. A voice drifted in from time to time. It was enigmatic, and carried a strong sour taste. Who's there? Hai Chen Feng looked around, and suddenly his figure flashed, and a blue light rippled. His body flew high into the air, and went straight to the roof, where he stood proudly. It's me. A strange laughter resounded. Several archers on the southern wall suddenly cried out in alarm as they fell to the ground. Two black-clothed men appeared on the wall together. They had a fierce look in their eyes as they looked at Hai Chen-feng. However, you can't be the only one to enjoy the big pie that is the capital's underworld. You'll have to spit it out even if you swallow it. Hai Chen-feng roared, and the aura around his body rose sharply. A bright blue light emerged from his body. Well, since you've spoken, then come and snatch it. Eliminate the weak and leave the strong. This is the rule of the game between the strong. Suddenly, his figure flew high into the air, and the blue light flashed. In a split second, he crossed the distance between the roof and the courtyard wall, and flew above the two men, and struck down with a loud bang. The two black-clothed men sneered and said, "Master Tian Xian, is it very rare?" Suddenly, he rose up, and rotated his body at a high speed. Then, he moved in a very strange spiral to meet Hai Chen-feng's falling body head-on. The two men shouted in unison, and a dreamy blue radiance shot out from their bodies. The three collided with each other with a loud bang. Then, the three men exploded like fireworks. The three men floated back at the same time, but then stopped in the air at the same time. Then, they turned around and flew back. Hai Chen-feng's expression was calm, and the corners of his mouth were curled into a confident smile. His palms were like giant axes that could split mountains, and were chopping down again and again. The sky-blue energy took the shape of a crescent moon, and was unceasingly attacking the two men. The two men whistled loudly, and attacked with their hands and feet. They didn't retreat even half a step. Suddenly, one of the black-clothed men let out a shrill cry, and retreated. The other man frantically rushed forward, and started a tangled battle with Hai Chen-feng. Since they were both disciples of the two great master-level masters, Hai Chen-feng thought that this matter would be over as long as these two men stopped fighting. But, he hadn't expected that these two men would continue to pester him. They didn't seem to care about him in the slightest. In fact, there was a hint of contempt in their tone. Hai Chen-feng didn't know that these two men were Li Yuran's two senior brothers. Lei Jianhong had promised Li Yuran that he would help him unify the capital's underworld. Tonight was the first night. But, he hadn't expected that he would be a step too late. Hai Chen-feng had taken the lead. So, how could these two men give up? They wouldn't know how to explain it to their junior brother if they didn't take it back. Besides, this was also related to the eldest brother's reputation. Therefore, these two men weren't willing to give up even though they knew that the two sides had some sort of relationship. Only these two people had the qualifications to sit in this hall. And these two people were the current lord of Blizzard's Silver City, the heavenly sword god, Han Zhanmeng. Together with his wife, Han Zhanqing. The old man in the middle waved his hand, and said in a clear voice, "Today, I have invited everyone here to discuss an important matter. Because this matter concerns the future of Blizzard's Silver City, everyone under Shenxian is to immediately go out and guard the hall. Do not allow anyone to come within 500 feet of the hall. Anyone who dares to come near will be killed without mercy." "Yes. We obey the Great Elder's command." Everyone cupped their hands and slowly left the hall. There were less than 10 people left in the hall, and it suddenly seemed a lot more spacious. There were less than 20 people left in the hall. "Is there news from Tianxiang?" Han Zhanmeng smiled and looked at the Great Elder, Xiao Xingyun. If it was any other news, the Great Elder might not be so cautious. Just as the Lord of the City said, it is news from Tianxiang City. Please take a look, third brother has sent this news from Tianxiang City. Even with our snow eagle, it took almost an entire night to deliver it. The news is quite shocking. The Great Elder replied, and unfolded a piece of paper, and handed it over. Han Zhanmeng shook his head with a smile, and took it. Shui Shuangqing, who was beside him, also came over to read it. The two of them were a little interested. The great elder, who was usually calm and collected, said that the news was shocking. How shocking could it be? The calm expressions on the two's faces became more and more serious as they read the paper, and the calm smile on their faces had long disappeared. The beautiful woman's beautiful face turned pale, and an inexplicable look of worry appeared on her face. There was also a faint trace of happiness, and she could not help but grab her husband's hands tightly, as if to remind him of something. Is there such a thing? Everyone, take a look. Tell us what you think. Han Zhanmeng finally finished reading, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Feeling his wife's movement, he sighed again, and waved his hand, and the paper was passed around for everyone to see. Solitary Eagle was in the Jun family, and he injured sixth brother. This. Feng Wu was injured by a mysterious person, and then the mysterious person suddenly appeared and snatched the soul-replenishing jade. Third brother said that he had no way to resist. This, how is this possible? Everyone cried out in surprise. They looked at each other, and their expressions were filled with bewilderment and uncertainty. It's only been a few days, and so many things have happened. The great elder, Shao Xingyun Lengleng, smiled. And that arrogant kid from the Jun family has actually been cured of his injuries. So many rare things have happened. Han Zhanmeng was silent for a moment, and then looked up at the great elder. Great elder, you have summoned everyone here, so you must have a plan. What plan can I have? The Silver Blizzard City's affairs are decided by the master of the city. The great elder bowed slightly, and took half a step back. Great elder, you are an important member of the city, what do you suggest? Han Zhanmeng was obviously not one to beat around the bush, and asked directly. That solitary eagle, relying on his status as a great master, humiliated sixth brother for no reason, and greatly damaged our prestige. He must be severely punished. If we let this matter go, where will the prestige of the Silver Blizzard City go? This is one of the reasons. The great elder said slowly. To think that he would severely punish one of the 8 great masters. This great elder was too bold. But when they heard this suggestion, no one in the meeting showed any change in expression, and they all nodded. Obviously, in the eyes of the leaders of the Silver Blizzard City, one of the 8 great masters, the eagle deity of the prairie, was not a threat at all. This showed that the Silver Blizzard City's strength had reached a shocking level. If there is one, then there must be another. Han Zhanmeng nodded lightly, and his expression did not change. Yes, that soul-replenishing jade is our Shao family's heirloom, and its effects are extraordinary. It can be said to be a celestial object, and it cannot fall into the hands of an outsider. This piece of jade had to be retrieved. There was no room for discussion about this either. No matter who took the jade, we can't deal with them expeditiously, this is the second reason. The great elder's eyes flashed with anger, and it was obvious that he was very angry about the matter of the soul-replenishing jade being stolen. As for this point, perhaps we need to think about it carefully. If what third elder said in the letter is true, then with just the strength of the people here, even if we gather everyone's strength, we may not be able to take back the soul-replenishing jade. Moreover, we can't dispatch so many people, so the chances of success are naturally even slimmer. If we are not careful, I am afraid that we will be in danger of losing our men at any time. Han Zhanmeng lightly tapped on the armrest of his chair, and said quietly with his eyes half closed. The master of the city's concerns are correct. This time, we need to think carefully before dispatching people, and try to avoid conflict with that mysterious person as much as possible. However, the third elder is only a first-grade martial artist like Shen Xian, and his knowledge may not necessarily be correct. Even if there is someone like the solitary eagle, in the eyes of a first-grade martial artist, he is still a celestial being. Therefore, the mysterious person mentioned in the letter may be far more powerful than the old master of the city's conjecture, but I do not believe it. I believe that even the strongest of the 8 great masters, Yunbi Chen, does not have such strength. In the secular world, is there someone who can surpass Yunbi Chen? From this, it can be seen that this information may not be true. The great elder's white brows furrowed. He spoke very slowly. Finally, he added, therefore, no matter what, we need to send people first. If that person is really unfathomable, then we can treat it as an inquiry. If that person is just a name, then we can immediately take it back. Yes, the great elder is experienced and prudent, and this can be regarded as the best plan. Han Zhanmeng looked at the great elder with approval, and said, but from what the great elder said, I think there are 3. Yes. The great elder raised his white eyebrows. Lengleng said, the 3rd is the Jun family. This small secular family has repeatedly challenged the authority of the Silver Blizzard City, and this is intolerable. This old man suggests that we exterminate their entire family to warn the world not to lightly challenge the authority of the Silver Blizzard City. Chapter 236. When the Jun family was mentioned, Xue Shuangqing's expression suddenly tightened, and she couldn't help but tighten her grip on her husband's hand. This can't be done. Han Zhanmeng's eyebrows slanted, like 2 sharp swords suddenly being unsheathed. I can agree to the first 2 points and act according to the great elder's suggestion, but don't mention the extermination of the Jun family. Do we have to go through what happened 10 years ago again? Han Zhanmeng looked at the elders in front of him and said solemnly, 10 years ago, many of your Shao family's Xinxian attacked the Jun family without my knowledge, and even intervened in the war between 2 countries, causing the Jun family's talents to wither, and the family to be destroyed. Although I finally stopped them, the Jun family suffered 3 blows in succession. The 2nd generation only has 1 cripple, and the 3rd generation only has 1 debauchee. No matter how you look at it, the Jun family has gone too far. No matter what, the Jun family is a loyal family, and the grievances between your 2 families are only personal. I still don't understand what the great elder just said. Since when has the Jun family repeatedly challenged the authority of the Silver Blizzard City? Wasn't it only the Shao family that they offended? This matter is not to be mentioned again. If anyone acts without permission again, I will punish them according to the laws of the city, and there will be no mercy. But the Jun family now has the support of 2 strong people, and sooner or later, they will become a big problem for the Silver Blizzard City. Even if we don't take the initiative to deal with the Jun family, they will definitely attack the Silver Blizzard City once they are strong enough to take revenge. City Lord, it doesn't matter who was right or wrong in the past. The fact remains that we killed 4 important members of the Jun family, and crippled Jun Wu-yi. This fact hasn't changed. I believe that this hatred will be difficult to resolve in this lifetime. Do you want the Shao family to be slaughtered to vent the anger of the Jun family? The great elder looked very indignant. The root cause of this matter is the Shao clan's fault. Could it be that first elder wishes to make mistakes again and again, making mistakes on top of mistakes? Just because of the love affair of a pair of children, blood will flow for hundreds of miles, and corpses will be laid 5 steps away. Killing good people because of this matter is a taboo in the Silver Blizzard City. We have been arguing about this for 10 years. They were also deadlocked for 10 years. I really have no interest in arguing any further. Han Zhanmeng's eyes turned cold. Great Elder, if the Jun family really wants to take revenge on the Silver Blizzard City, then you can do whatever you want, and I won't interfere. But, don't mention this matter again until the Jun family attacks the Silver Blizzard City. Wait for the Jun family to attack the Silver Blizzard City. What a huge joke. With just the meager strength of a secular family, wasn't that purely courting death? The Jun family won't have such strength even after a few hundred years, another elder snorted and said. This man was tall and thin. He was the 2nd elder, Shao Buyu. Since the Jun family is so weak, why are the Shao family in such a hurry? Han Zhanmeng glared at them. The most important thing is that First Miss is not young anymore, and Han is still unmarried. If this drags on. The Great Elder saw that Han Zhanmeng was against it, so he didn't insist and changed the topic. This matter needs to be considered at length. Han Zhanmeng looked like he had a headache. Great Elder, have you forgotten what happened 10 years ago? Do you really want to drive Yao crazy and force her to death? Yao has always been your most beloved granddaughter. Do you really have the heart to do that? The Great Elder was silent for a long time. Then, he sighed sadly and didn't speak anymore. 10 years ago, when Han Yanyao returned to the Silver Blizzard City and heard the news that the Shao family was dealing with the Jun family, she went crazy. She threatened to kill herself and severed her meridians in front of Han Zhanmeng and the Great Elder. She swore to live and die with the Jun family. The scene of blood on the ground was still vivid in her mind. And this was the main reason why Han Zhanmeng didn't allow the Shao family to deal with the Jun family. He didn't forget that after the old master of the city rescued Han Yanyao, the Shao family thought that everything was over, so they attacked the Jun family again. At that time, Han Yanyao's body was weak and couldn't sever her meridians. But that stubborn woman stabbed 2 swords into her body and stood in front of the Great Elder with blood all over her body, asking him to rescind his order. The Great Elder had no choice but to cancel the secret plan against the Jun family. But it was also because of Han Yanyao's fierce actions that the old master of the city flew into a rage, and Han Zhanmeng and his wife were furious with the Shao family. The Silver Blizzard City's divisions began to show at that time. Of course, these things were only known to a few people within the Silver Blizzard City, outsiders didn't know about it. Let's take 10,000 steps back. As long as we teach the solitary falcon a lesson, wouldn't that be tantamount to giving the Jun family another heavy blow? Whether or not the Jun family can bear it is still uncertain. Let's not talk about exterminating the Shao family again. Han Zhanmeng sighed in his heart, and his eyes swept across the hall, looking at a lonely snow-capped peak not far away, thinking, Yao, this is all I can do for you. I only hope that you, in that case, I think there is no harm in making this arrangement. Although the Great Elder was somewhat unwilling, he had to give up and suggested, this time, second brother will lead the 5th and 8th brothers down the mountain, and to be on the safe side, will the old master of the city's 7 swords of ice and snow go with them? After all, if that mysterious person is really powerful, we will have a higher chance of success with the 7 swords of ice and snow. Good. That's the decision. The rest of the matters will be arranged by the Great Elder. Han Zhanmeng rubbed his forehead, stood up, and accompanied his wife out of the hall. Before they left the hall, he suddenly turned around and said firmly, in any case, no one is allowed to involve the Jun family. If anyone violates this, I will report this to my father and expel them from the Silver Blizzard City. There will be no mercy. After that, the two slowly walked away. The Great Elder's expression didn't change. But, a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. He stood there calmly for a long time. Then, he suddenly turned around and looked at Xiao Buyu, get ready. You'll leave the mountain this afternoon. Big brother, then, what about the Jun family? Xiao Buyu frowned. There will be plenty of opportunities. Xiao Xingyun took a deep breath. After you go down the mountain, you must act appropriately. Yes. Outside the hall, Xue Shuangqing was relieved. She patted her chest and said with some lingering fear, thank you for your help, husband. If not for your insistence, the Jun family would not have been able to escape this time, and if the Jun family had met with misfortune, I'm afraid Yao would have. Although I stopped this matter in time, Yao's heart is still difficult to resolve. We can only take one step at a time. Han Zhanmeng sighed deeply, looked up at the snowflakes in the sky, and said softly, Yao has suffered too much for the past 10 years. As her father, how could I completely cut off her last glimmer of hope? No matter who it is, no one can hurt my daughter. My family. Han Zhanmeng Lengleng said in a low voice. With a wave of his sleeves, a boulder that was covered by the wind and snow suddenly shattered into pieces, filling the sky with snowflakes. Xue Shuangqing snuggled up to her husband, suddenly feeling very peaceful and safe. She only felt that with her husband's broad shoulders, nothing in the world could hurt her and her two precious daughters. She could not help but smile contentedly. On a lonely snowy peak not far from the main hall, in a cave made of ice and snow, a graceful masked woman in white opened a letter in her jade-like hands. She only glanced at it, and her fingers suddenly trembled, and tears flowed out of her eyes. It's really him. His injury is really healed, God bless. The woman in white cried tears of joy, and her delicate body trembled like a leaf in the wind. For the past 10 years, she had been like an iceberg, but this letter had broken her frozen state of mind, revealing the weakness and helplessness buried deep in her heart. Tears flowed out of her eyes, and the woman in white sobbed in a low voice. Suddenly, she stood up, walked to the entrance of the cave, and knelt down devoutly. Looking at the dark sky, she put her palms together and prayed in a low voice, "Thank God for his recovery, thank God for his pain, please give him happiness. I am willing to reduce my lifespan by 10 years, 20 years, in exchange for his safety and happiness. Even if we can't be together, I will still be your Yao, and always will be." Her soft prayer quietly melted into the wind and snow in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, a gale arose in the sky, and the snowflakes that hadn't stopped yet became bigger, denser, and fluttered down. The lonely and frail figure on the snowy peak was completely wrapped in the wind and snow. But, the woman in white remained motionless on her knees, and prayed devoutly. Her tears had frozen into ice. Not long after, 10 figures flew out of the silver city like shooting stars, and hid in the wind and snow as they went down the mountain. Early in the morning, Fatty dragged Jun Dashao out of bed, wailing like a ghost. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Fatty was dressed in a navy blue robe, and looked particularly spirited. His whole body seemed to have lost some weight, and at least he looked more like a human. His face was clean-shaven, and his hair exuded the fragrance of honey locust. His face was pale with powder. This Fatty had actually put on powder, and it was very thick. Ugh. June Moxie felt nauseous. "Fatty, do you know that with your body size, you look very scary with makeup on? You actually put on such thick powder, are you pretending to be a ghost? Why did you wake me up so early?" He looked out of the window, and it was only dawn. Third young master. Boss. Fatty Tang was actually a little bashful. "Didn't you say that you would accompany me to see Miss Sun today, Miss Sun?" "That Miss Sun? Oh." June Mo Xia suddenly remembered. "She's the fiancée that you lost to you once?" Fuck. Fatty was a little angry. "Can you not mention this? Didn't I do such a dirty thing?" After saying that, he looked at himself with some self-satisfaction. "I don't look bad now, right? Am I a little slimmer? And, I have indeed become a lot slimmer. This is the truth, and I can indeed see a little human." The corner of June Moxie's mouth twitched. "You are really too slim, you really fascinate me." Tang Yuan opened his mouth and laughed twice. He narcissistically spun in a circle, feeling very elegant. But this spin was not a big deal, and his originally tidied and soft belly was immediately spun up. It was like a big sandbag tied with a rubber belt, full of elasticity. With a whoosh, it also spun in a circle, and then slapped on his thigh and knee with a squeak. "This is the first time we meet, I have to leave a good impression on Miss Sunday." Tang Yuan's small eyes were full of longing, and he looked very happy. Chapter 237. June Moxie couldn't bear to look at it, so he covered his eyes and groaned. He was very curious, what kind of woman would be able to bear the weight of nearly 250 kilograms? He couldn't help but be curious. After breakfast, the two of them stared at each other for a while. Then, they calculated that it was about time. So, they went out with a large group of bodyguards to meet the beautiful woman. Third young master, what do you think I'll do if Miss Sun dislikes me for being fat or heavy? Tang Yuan's mind was heavy along the way, and he was worried about personal gains and losses. The horse under his crotch was breathing heavily, snorting loudly, and frothing at the corners of its mouth. June Moxie grunted twice in response. His eyes were looking at both sides of the road, and he had an absent-minded look on his face. Fatty Tang didn't notice June Sunshao's absent-mindedness. He looked at his fat body in distress, and sighed. Then, he suddenly thought of something, and slapped his thigh. Then, he suddenly twisted his waist, and excitedly asked, Third young master, do you think it will be effective if I lose weight, if you supervise me? The horse under his crotch let out a mournful whine, and its hooves trembled a few times. It panted heavily a few times, and turned its head to look at Tang Yuan with a sad expression. It then slowed down even more. It seemed that Fatty Tang's twisting of his waist had caused the horse to twist its waist, and, after I'm done with this, and your injuries have mostly healed, I'll start to help you lose weight. Jun Mo Xia smiled evilly as he rubbed his chin and said, I'll make you as thin as a bean sprout. Well, I'll leave it to you, you know, I'd be quite handsome if I wasn't so fat. Tang Yuan pinched his fingers together, and gave Jun Moxie a coquettish wink. Go! Jun Mo Xia fiercely whipped the horse's buttocks. It had just run out when it turned its head, and spat out a mouthful of saliva. Fatty Tang's coquettish wink was too lethal, they actually arranged to meet here. Jun Moxie looked at the heavily guarded restaurant in front of him and couldn't help but widen his eyes. Your fiancé actually asked you to meet in a restaurant? This is too surprising. You really didn't propose the meeting place? It's really not me. Isn't it good to meet in a restaurant? I think it's pretty good. Tang Yuan looked at the young master Jun in bewilderment, and asked in bewilderment, what's so strange about that? Isn't it strange? If it's a man and another man meeting in a restaurant, there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's a woman meeting her fiancé in a restaurant. That's a little out of the ordinary. Jun Moxie clicked his tongue and said, Fatty, it seems that your future wife is no ordinary person. What's wrong with that? If not at a restaurant, then at a brothel? Tang Yuan rolled his eyes. He didn't understand Jun Dashao's attitude. He snorted through his nostrils and said, Don't be so surprised. Jun Mo Xia hadn't even had the time to speak when a white shadow suddenly flew out of the restaurant with a schwa sound. In fact, the white shadow had already landed on Jun Mo Xia's shoulder the moment he saw it. Its speed was in no way inferior to that of a first-class expert. Jun Dashao didn't react in the face of this sudden attack. He allowed the white shadow to stay on his shoulder. Instead, it whimpered twice and slid down to his chest. Then, it drilled into his bosom. The clothes on his chest rose and fell, and a small head popped out of Jun Moxie's collar. It stretched its head and looked around. Then, it snuggled up to him, and didn't move. It was as if it was in the most intimate, reliable, and comfortable embrace. Hey! Little thing, how come you're here? Hitman Jun had already figured out what that white shadow was. He pulled the ear of the little creature in his bosom, and asked in a soft voice. The little thing that had suddenly fallen from the sky was naturally Duga Xiaoyi's iron-winged panther. He could feel its weight in his bosom. He hadn't seen it for a few days, but it had grown a lot heavier. Furthermore, there was a pair of small protrusions on both of this little fellow's ribs, sticking up obliquely. Normally, the iron-winged panther would only grow wings when it was nearing adulthood, when its strength had reached its peak. However, this little fellow that was at most a month old had already grown an embryonic form. This little fellow's future was absolutely limitless. The little thing's eyes were bright and watery as it listened to Jun Dashao's question. It whimpered twice, and its eyes were full of affection. It stuck out its pink tongue, and gently licked Jun Dashao's collar. Then, it happily turned over, and stretched out its two small claws to grab Jun Dashao's collar. Its face was full of enjoyment, and it looked as if it wanted to hug him for another 500 years. The little thing was guarding against a good man who would throw it out. As for what he was asking, it didn't understand. The little girl regarded this little thing as the apple of her eye. Since it had appeared here, that meant, Jun Moxie shook his head. There was no need to think about it any further. Since this little thing had appeared here, then the little girl Dugu Xiaoyi must also be here. Jun Dashao had a headache thinking about the little girl's unruly ways. Speaking of the entire Tianxiang city, including the emperor of the Tianxiang Empire whom Jun Moxie had yet to meet, young Master Jun might not be willing to put them in his eyes. But when it came to people he truly wanted to avoid, the little girl Dugu Xiaoyi was definitely one of them. But now that they were at the door, they couldn't retreat. Jun Dashao had no choice but to bite the bullet, and beckon Fatty Tang to dismount from his horse. The two of them then walked inside. Could this be considered as knowing that there was a tiger on the mountain, but still walking towards the tiger's mountain? It seemed that Minister's son had put in a lot of effort for today's meeting. He had gone through a lot of trouble to book the entire restaurant. The entire restaurant only had one table of guests in the central hall. Moreover, there were only two of them. One of them was wearing a light green robe, and had an unusually petite figure. It was obviously that little girl Dugu Xiaoyi. Her braids would sway twice with every sentence she spoke. This was a habitual movement. But, who was the person sitting with her? Beside Dugu Xiaoyi was a bold and forthright man. He had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear. His shoulders were broad, and his arms were thick. His hair was slightly yellow. One look and one could tell that this man was an extraordinary man. It seemed that the Dugu family was still worried. So, they had sent one of Dugu Xiaoyi's older brothers to be her bodyguard. I wonder which of the heroes and legends rush forward is it? However, Jun Dashao could clearly feel that this man's temperament was above that of the heroes and legends rush forward and the other heroes and legends rush forward. Could it be that the Dugu family is hiding the eighth brother? Jun Dashao and Tang Yuan saw these two men as soon as they entered the restaurant. They were about to walk over when they suddenly felt that something was wrong. Jun Moxie patted his forehead. "Excuse me, Fatty Tang is here for a blind date." "I'm not here for a blind date." "But, where is that Miss Sun?" "It seems that there isn't a second woman here apart from Dugu Xiaoyi." I don't know why, but an unprecedented sense of fear has inexplicably sprouted in my heart. In fact, I can't seem to get rid of it in any way I can. Jun Moxie's mind raced, and he faintly thought of an impossible possibility. He pulled Fatty's sleeve, and asked in a low voice, "Fatty, have you seen your fiancée before?" "She's the young Miss Sun." Tang Yuan was so nervous that his palms were sweating. He felt that his whole body was out of sorts. His hands were pulling here and there, and his fat head was twisting around. He was sizing himself up in all directions. He had vowed to leave a perfect impression on his fiancée. So, when he heard Jun Moxie's words, he replied in a low voice, "No, but my fiancée is a genuine young lady from a noble family. How can an ordinary person see him if he doesn't step out of his house?" Then, Tang Yuan mysteriously moved closer to Jun Moxie's ear and said, "But, I'm guessing that this person shouldn't be wrong, because I've heard my grandfather say that he has a very good impression of Miss Sunday. So, my grandfather's eyesight is so good that he can't be wrong." "Then, what did your grandfather say?" Jun Moxie was very curious. "My grandfather said, that girl from the Sun family has a big butt. She'll definitely give birth to a son. She'll be a perfect match for you." Tang Yuan smiled obscenely, his two short eyebrows jumping up and down in excitement. "Third young master, it's not like you don't know that this big brother likes women with big butts. My fiancée is this big brother's dream lover." He, June Moxie rolled his eyes and walked inside. He no longer paid attention to this obscene fatty. He even made up stories about his fiancée. It was really outrageous. But what kind of girl could make a perfect match for Fatty? Fatty's conduct and the fact that Minister's son hadn't proposed to break off the engagement even though he had done such a dirty deed a while ago, it seemed very unusual. While Jun Dashao was pondering over this strange matter, a voice shocked the hitman. Jun. Brother Mo Xia, you've come. Dugu Xiaoyi was the first to discover them. She excitedly welcomed them. I guessed that you would accompany Fatty. So, I pestered sister's son to accompany her. Hee, I guessed right. You've really come. Come quickly. Jun Moxie's whole body quivered. He felt a layer of goosebumps all over his body. Dugu Xiaoyi's call of Brother Mo Xia made Jun Moxie's whole body turn cold. When did this girl become so polite to me? Ah, it's you, Miss Dugu. We're really fated, hee, we meet each other everywhere we go. Which sister son of yours is? Jun Mo Xia quickly answered and tried to ask in case of, what if? You're still calling me Miss Dugu. Dugu Xiaoyi pouted in dissatisfaction. She looked at Jun Moxie with hatred. Then, she suddenly reached out and pulled Little White out of Jun Moxie's arms. Ignoring the little guy's squeaking, she pursed her lips and said, isn't that right? Tang Yuan had been drooling over his fiancée for a long time. So, he stretched out his neck to look. But, he still couldn't find the beautiful figure of Miss Sunday. Because Dugu Xiaoyi was pointing at the place where the tall and sturdy man was drinking by himself. Where was Miss Sun? Chapter 238. While Fatty was still in doubt, he saw the tall and sturdy man slowly stand up. When the man stood up, he couldn't be considered to be too tall, but his figure was abnormally plump and strong. The man slowly turned around, cupped his fists, and laughed heartily. Is this the Jun family's Jun Sun Shao and the Tang family's future husband, Tang Yuan? This little sister is Sun Shao Mei. Tang Yuan, the eldest son of the Tang family, was dumbfounded. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets, and his jaw nearly dropped to the ground. He looked at the woman in front of him, who was more forthright than a man. She had thick eyebrows and big eyes, and she wasn't ugly. Well, this was according to the standards of the Shandong burly men. This woman's hair was tied up in a hero bun, and she didn't have the slightest bit of makeup on her body. She didn't even have a single piece of jewelry on her head, and when she raised her hands and cupped her fists, she had a deep and lofty bearing, and as steady as Mount Tai. When she opened her mouth to speak, her voice was like a great bell, and it was deafening to the ears. She had the demeanor of a master. Her butt is really not small, Fatty. She's exactly the type you like. Old master was right, you really are a perfect match, a match made in heaven. Jun Dashao didn't know what to say at this time, and could only laugh a few times, awkwardly cupped his hands, and then congratulated Fatty in a low voice. Oh my! Tang Yuan's eyes were wide open, as if he had been struck by lightning. His normally small eyes had long turned into a bull's eyes, and his mouth was wide open from ear to ear, saliva dripping down. Suddenly, he let out a groan, and then his throat made the sound of a rooster being strangled. He. A few sounds were heard, and then his eyes rolled back as if he had been hanged. Suddenly, his huge body fell to the ground, and his head bounced twice before he fainted. Miss Sun Xiaomei stood in front of Fatty Tang. Fatty Tang had been fantasizing about her for several years. She was the daughter of a noble family. She was the daughter of a high-ranking minister. She was the best candidate for a fiancé, and so on. The contrast was too great. The pitiful Tang Yuan Chu had suffered such a huge change. How could he withstand such a cruel blow? He eventually foamed at the mouth, and fainted. It seems that this little girl has really frightened this fiancé of mine. Sun Xiaomei laughed at herself, and a trace of pain appeared in her eyes, but she immediately hid it. She looked at Tang Yuan for a while, and nodded, and said, "My future husband is really a little fat, he should lose some weight." After saying that, she cupped her hands and extended her hands, and said, "Jun Sunshao, please sit." Originally, Jun Dashao had guessed the truth of the matter before Fatty Tang, and he didn't have a good first impression of this minister's daughter. It must be known that although Fatty was unbearable, he was still the heir of an important family in Tianxiang. No matter how one looked at it, his wife shouldn't be like Sun Xiaomei or Miss Sunday. It wasn't that he looked down on women, but in this world, women had always been the vassals of men. No matter how unbearable a man was, or how ugly he looked, it would still be a problem. But if a woman had a little flaw, it would be a huge problem. Not to mention the heroic Miss Sun. However, although Jun Dashao had only known Miss Sun for a short time, he had a very good impression of this minister's daughter. His eyes revealed a sincere look of admiration, because this woman in front of him, other than her slightly inferior appearance and figure, was perfect in every aspect. This was in accordance with the saying, "Women are not inferior to men." Whether it was her temperament or her way of doing things, she was straightforward and efficient. Compared to most men, she was much better. If not for the fact that she was born a woman, this woman would certainly be a heroic figure. If one were to say that they weren't a match, then only Fatty couldn't match up to Miss Sunday. If Fatty let go, he would definitely be walking away with a treasure. However, this congenital defect had undoubtedly doomed her to a tragedy. After all, most men only looked at women based on their appearance. A woman's inner beauty, no matter how outstanding she was meaningless to most men. To put it bluntly, although Jun Dashao admired her at this moment, it was only because he was an outsider. If Minister Sun had said to Jun Dashao, "Jun Dashao, since you think so highly of my daughter, then this old man will marry her to you," he would guarantee that Jun Dashao would immediately flee and wouldn't dare to see Minister Sun's little daughter for the rest of his life. Such a treasure would be fine. Brother Mo Xia, although Sister Sun's appearance isn't outstanding, she is kind, beautiful, intelligent, and extremely intelligent. She is one of our close friends, and Sister Sun is the most outstanding one. Sister Sun's personality is the most forthright and generous. She never takes trivial matters to heart. We all like her very much. Dugu Xiaoli said with a smile as she stroked little White, who was in her arms. Very good. Jun Moxie praised sincerely. This wasn't just for show. Jun Dashao understood the little lass's personality very well. She was naive and pure. If you treated her well from the bottom of your heart, she would definitely be able to tell. The evaluation from her mouth wouldn't contain any false or falsehood. It could be said that her evaluation was quite objective and true. With the background of this era, it could be said that there were very few women who could be so forthright and generous. They didn't care about trivial matters. Although Miss Sun's innate physique was somewhat flawed, it was already commendable. Sun Xiaomei smiled slightly and sat down. She picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea for Jun Moxie. She raised her thick eyebrows and looked at Jun Moxie. She said, "Jun Sunshao, although today is the first time we meet, I feel that the third young master doesn't match up to the rumors." Really? Jun Moxie picked up the teacup and chuckled. He said, "What's wrong with it?" Sun Xiaomei didn't reply immediately. Instead, she smiled in a free and easy manner. It was a smile full of masculinity and heroism. It blossomed on her rough face. There was a kind of indescribable harmony in it. "To tell you the truth, I didn't come here today for Tang Yuan." Sun Xiaomei smiled. "This little girl and Tang Yuan's marriage was arranged by our parents. I'm a woman, and an extremely ugly woman at that. I've already accepted my fate, and I don't intend to resist. However, I've recorded everything that Tang Yuan has done for the past 5 years. I've recorded everything. I know everything about him, no matter how big or small, like the back of my hand. Jun Dashao suddenly felt a chill down his spine. I mourn for Fatty. It seems that the hitman Jun can already foresee the miserable life of Fatty Tang. Tang Yuan isn't a good person. He's not a gentleman. Sun Xiaomei looked at Tang Yuan on the ground. She smiled and said, to put it bluntly, he's an out-and-out scoundrel. He's a real villain. Well said. Jun Moxie laughed. He clapped his hands and said, this evaluation can be said to have hit the nail on the head. But this villain has a true temperament. Sun Xiaomei smiled. He doesn't hide what he likes or dislikes. He doesn't even dare to hide it. He doesn't even dare to say what he hates in front of his face. I like this kind of person with a true temperament. Therefore, even though his infamy is as bad as a pig, even though he is as stupid as a donkey, even though he is as fat as a pig, even though he is as stupid as a donkey, and has many other bad deeds, young master is his good friend. You should be more familiar with Tang Yuan than I am. I won't say anything more. I just want to emphasize one point. It's definitely not a beast. So I have nothing to be dissatisfied with. Moreover, my condition isn't good. To be able to find such a partner, it can be said that I have someone to rely on in this life. Sun Xiaomei smiled lightly. So, the two of us can be said to be a perfect match, a match made in heaven. Cough, cough, cough. Jun Moxie coughed a few times. He felt ashamed to face her. Ever since he came to this world, this was the first time he met a woman like this. Not only did she talk about her appearance, but she also didn't hide her marriage. If it was any other woman, she would have been ashamed. Even if she had 1,000 words in her heart, she would never dare to say it out loud. But Sun Xiaomei, the Sun family's lady Sun, talked and talked without stopping. Chapter 239. Jun Mo Xia laughed heartily and crossed his legs. Swinging them a couple of times, he said, I wonder who is that sister of yours who is so devoted to this young master. Haha, there are many people in Tianxiang City who hate me. Not to mention one, I'm afraid I can find 8 or 10 of them. But, it's the first time I've heard of someone who is so devoted to me. This young master is quite interested to know who has such good eyesight. As soon as he said this, Dugu Xiaoyi immediately became nervous. She looked at Sun Xiaomei with a pleading look on her face, and didn't want her to say anything. Why should I say anything? That person is far away. Sun Xiaomei smiled mysteriously. She ignored Dugu Xiaoyi's pleading look, and continued to speak. He's right in front of you. Jun Sunshao, you've even accepted the token of love. Why are you still pretending to be confused? Token of love? Jun Moxie was shocked. He suddenly remembered the jade pendant that Dugu Xiaoyi had given to him that day. Could it be? Oh, my God, Jun Dashao immediately turned his head to look at the shy Dugu Xiaoyi. The little girl had completely shrunk her head into her collar, and wouldn't raise her head no matter what. Jun Moxie heaved a long sigh. How could he not understand the situation? He didn't expect that a silly little girl would set a lifelong relationship with him. Jun Dashao was a little depressed. But, he didn't know why, but he also felt a faint sense of pride in his heart. Look, the original Jun Moxie was regarded as a gangster and a bully. How could anyone have a good impression of him? This young master has crossed over to this world. How long has it been? But, there's already a beauty who has secretly fallen in love with me. The goddess has a heart, and she won't marry anyone else. A sense of accomplishment, Dugu Xiaoyi was getting more and more embarrassed. Her own thoughts were hazy, but this elder sister's son had called out to her in a loud voice. This was so embarrassing that she was about to die. Sun Xiaomei had been paying attention to the subtle changes in Jun Dashao's expression. Finally, she said, I can finally confirm it now. It's very reasonable for the younger sister to hate you to the bone, and it can even be said that it's very reasonable. As for the other sister's love for you, it's not entirely without reason. Miss Sun, your words are very puzzling. At least, I am very puzzled. Jun Moxie waved his hand weakly. I still don't understand what you mean today. It's fine if you don't understand. If you really understood, then it would be a great misfortune for us girls. Sun Xiaomei smiled faintly. Then, she suddenly said thoughtfully, Jun Sun Xiao, you're not a good person. At least, you're not a so-called gentleman. Moreover, I'm very curious about one thing. How many people in this world are worthy of your attention? Hitman Jun was finally frightened. I don't know what he's thinking. He doesn't even want to talk to me. It was a pity that Jun Mo Xia didn't care about the little girl at this time. He kept repeating Sun Xiao Mei's last words in his heart, it doesn't matter how much capital you have. It doesn't matter how proud and arrogant you are. But, it's best that you put away your arrogance for now. After all, now is not the time for you to be arrogant. To Jun Mo Xia, these words were like a morning bell, deafening and deafening. He had brought along the powerful memories and skills of his previous life. He had also brought along a powerful magical weapon to accompany him. Now, he had obtained an extremely powerful cultivation technique. Moreover, although his soul had transmigrated, the incomparable arrogance of the King of Assassins from his previous life had also come with him. With so many advantages, why can't I be arrogant? Is there any reason why I can't be arrogant? In this world, whether it was Tian Xian, or Shen Xian, or even the Great Master, none of them were worthy of Jun Dashao's attention. In his heart, he had always believed that the people of this world were only so, nothing more than this. How strong could they be? Jun Moxie's arrogance as a descendant of the Yellow Dragon had made him subconsciously think that he was above everyone else in this world. Moreover, he didn't care much about life and death. Therefore, he was even more arrogant than before. However, Sun Xiaomei's understated words today seemed to be unintentional. But, it pointed out the biggest flaw in Jun Moxie's character, arrogance. Too arrogant. If he were to face an ordinary person, then he would be arrogant. After all, he was the only young master of the Jun family in Tianxiang City. So, he had the qualifications to be arrogant. And, not many people could afford to provoke him. However, if he were to face an outsider from the Jianghu, then a debauchee from the capital city wouldn't have the qualifications. Especially now that the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuahan Manor thought that a mere young master of the Jun family wasn't a big deal in their eyes. In fact, they wouldn't even care if they killed him. It seemed that he needed to sort out his mentality, and put away some of his unnecessary arrogance. Just as he was thinking about this, he heard Dugu Xiao-yi let out a humph sound. Her buttocks dragged the stool and turned around. Then, she let out another humph sound, and turned around again. Then, she turned around a few times, and her pretty face became more and more gloomy. Her small hands were rubbing Little White, and Little White was squealing in pain. Are there worms under your butt? Jun Moxie asked in a puzzled manner. Why is this little girl twisting around like a maggot? There are worms under your butt. Dugu Xiaoyi shouted, you're ignoring me. You're not talking to me. You hate me. Dugu Xiaoyi angrily pouted, and stamped her feet. The more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged. This guy is ignoring me, and has left me hanging for so long, and now he's saying such a thing. Jun Moxie was stunned. I don't know why this young lady is so angry. Jun Moxie was at his wit's end in the face of such girlish sentiments. He couldn't help but become impatient, and said, what's wrong with you? If you don't talk, then I'll leave. You. Dugu Xiaoyi felt bitter for a long time. She bit her lip, and restrained her temper. Then, she whispered, you've caused me so much trouble, and now you want to leave. Trouble? June Moxie opened his eyes wide. What trouble did I cause you? He thought, if you're talking about trouble, then you're the one causing me trouble, right? Why are you inverting right and wrong? Look at Little White. It's been turning my house upside down these past few days. Dugu Xiao-yi bit her lips. A level 8 iron-winged panther cub, this is something that has never been seen since ancient times. But, it has appeared in my house. Isn't this a huge problem? The people of the capital have gone to see it these past few days. And, they've clicked their tongues in wonder. My father and I wanted to beat someone up. This was indeed a problem. But, June Moxie didn't have any way to deal with it. What did your father say? My father became anxious, and said, how do I know what's going on? You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? I'm also puzzled. How about I give each of you a knife, and you go to the underworld to look for its parents and ask them? Dugu Xiaoyi imitated Dugu Wudi's words to perfection. She couldn't help but laugh as she spoke. June Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'll give you a knife, and I'll send you to hell to see the scenery. Then, I'll come back, okay? I don't understand how that Dugu Wudi could think of such a thing. And, he even said it so confidently, genius. I've finally completed it. I'll say the same thing again, I'll do my best, and I'll have no regrets about victory or defeat. As a writer, writing is my duty. I've done my part, and that's good enough. I've written at least 2 chapters this month. So far, I've written no less than 10 chapters. I've also written more than 70 chapters. I've written 230,000 characters by the end of this month. I'm very satisfied with this number. Many of my brothers have a monthly ticket in their hands. Perhaps, they're waiting for me to erupt. I'm afraid that I won't be able to erupt at the end of the month. I can only say that I've done my best. I ask for everyone's forgiveness. Thank you. Chapter 240. Your father is a genius. His idea is very creative. June Moxie exclaimed in admiration. However, he was secretly cursing in his heart. Even if someone is willing to die for a righteous cause, and find Little White's parents in the Yellow Springs, I reckon that they won't be able to get an answer from them. After all, the little thing's current situation had already surpassed the scope of the iron-winged leopard's history. Even the ancestor of the iron-winged leopard, or the strongest iron-winged leopard in history, wouldn't be able to explain the little thing's current situation. He then looked at the little girl in front of him. This little girl is also a first-class talent. Her temperament is very unique. She was angry with me a moment ago. In fact, her eyes seemed to be misty. But, she started to smile as soon as she thought of something fun. In fact, she didn't even have to turn her tears into a smile. She's very adorable. I also thought so. Those people who wanted to take advantage of me ran away faster than anything else when my father said that. Everyone wants to take advantage of me. But, no one is interested in taking advantage of me if I can't even exchange my life for it. Ha ha. Dugu Xiao-yi smiled proudly. I thought that I would have to spend a lot of effort to fabricate a flawless lie for you. But, I didn't expect that I wouldn't even need to use it. My father has a brain. In my mother's words, great wisdom appears to be stupidity. He has a hidden talent. Great wisdom appears to be stupidity. Intellect. These 2 words can be used to describe great General Dugu Wudi. It's such a pity. Then, are we going to deal with this matter? June Moxie was somewhat moved in his heart. No matter what, this little girl was purely thinking for his own good. She didn't want to expose herself. As for Dugu Wudi, he was a complete barbarian. So, he had solved the problem by accident. Well, it's over for the time being. Dugu Xiaoyi nodded. There were a lot of people who wanted to buy Little White at a high price, but I drove them away. Little White is mine, and no one can touch it. Besides, it is our witness. The little girl's voice became lower and lower, and only she could hear the last sentence. Anyway, Jun Dashao couldn't hear it. After saying that, Dugu Xiaoyi paused for a moment before turning her head to look at Jun Moxie. In a low voice, she said, "Our family received an invitation from your Jun family yesterday." "Oh?" Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows. "If I hadn't accepted the invitation, I wouldn't have known that you made such a big bet with my father." Dugu Xiaoyi was a little worried and angry. She glared at him and said, "You really dare to gamble? I really don't know what you're thinking. What kind of wine costs 10,000 taels of silver per jar? This was something that should never have happened. And you, humph." My father laughed when he received the invitation, and said that he would be able to fix you. "Oh, by the way, did my father force you to make this bet?" "Can't fix me." "Huh? What are you talking about?" "That's not it. This bet is about, you invite me. Besides, this young master has a lofty and unyielding character. So, how could anyone force me?" Jun Moxie touched his chin, and a trace of light flashed in his eyes. "General Dugu certainly didn't force me. After all, I was the one who created this inexplicable bet. Fix me? Who will fix whom in the end? That's hard to say." Jun Dashao didn't forget that the Dugu family would owe him an astronomical amount of debt once he successfully auctioned the wine. "But, what will General Dugu use to reduce his debt? Are you sure?" Dugu Xiaoyi looked at him. Her eyes were full of anxiety. It was clear that this little girl didn't want Jun Moxie to lose to her father. So, she would rather her father lose. "It'll be very ugly if he loses. How can you make such an unfair bet with my father?" It's hard to say whether it's fair or not." Jun Moxie paused 3 times as he spoke in a very serious manner. His plan was absolutely foolproof. So, it wouldn't be unfair to Jun Dashao even if it was unfair. However, there was still a possibility that he would lose in case these idiots from another world didn't buy it. After all, there was still a chance in a million. "How about I come with my father tomorrow?" The expression in Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes fluctuated. She suddenly lowered her head, and gritted her teeth. She had made up her mind, "I'll cry if he makes things difficult for you. I'll make trouble for him. I won't let him bully you. You can rest assured, it was said that girls were extroverted." It was indeed true. The little girl's mind was now filled with Jun Moxie. No matter what, she couldn't let brother Moxia lose. However, she had completely forgotten that if her father lost, her family would immediately be burdened with a heavy debt. That was not a small amount of money. Jun Moxie's heart warmed again. For the first time in his life, there was a hint of gentleness in his usually calm, callous, and almost cold-blooded eyes. Jun Moxia wasn't an idiot. So, how could he not feel that the little girl was so pure and innocent? She was wholeheartedly thinking about him. Jun Moxia wasn't a fool. So, how could he not feel it? Humans weren't plants or trees. How could they be emotionless? "Little girl, don't worry. I won't be at a disadvantage." Jun Moxie smiled warmly. He stretched out his hand and gently stroked Dugu Xiaoyi's beautiful hair. He withdrew his hand as if he had been electrocuted. Subconsciously, he still felt that being intimate with a woman was not in line with his identity as an assassin. He had lived 2 lives, but this was the first time he had such a subtle feeling. Although his identity in this life wasn't an assassin, Jun Moxie blushed and smiled. Little White sneezed after a long time. It woke the 2 people up, and broke the silence. Dugu Xiaoyi's face turned red. She slightly raised her head, and shyly glanced at Jun Moxie. She then whispered, "Idiot, didn't you want to leave? Why haven't you left?" Are you stupid? Jun Mo suddenly realized that he had lost his composure. In fact, he had even lost his mind. This was the first time he had made such a big mistake in his 2 lives. So, he quickly composed himself and laughed. I almost didn't want to leave after seeing such a beautiful little girl. I would have turned into a pervert if you hadn't woken me up. Dugu Xiaoyi snorted. She slightly rolled her eyes at him and whispered, "You're such a pervert. Do you think I'm afraid of a pervert like you? Since you have things to do, then go and do them." She turned around. Jun Moxie could clearly see that Dugu Xiaoyi's nape had turned red after she had finished speaking. What's the big deal with those words? Why are you so shy? Jun Dashao had rarely been close to women in his 2 lives. So, how could he know what was on his daughter's mind? Dugu Xiaoyi was startled to realize that her tone was very much like that of a gentle wife. She was gently exhorting her husband to go out to do some work. She recalled that her mother would always use the same tone every time her father went out to battle. She couldn't help but feel ashamed in her heart. These words, "It's as if I'm this kid's, who am I? Who am I?" The more she thought about it, the redder her face became. She didn't dare to raise her delicate little head again. "Haha, beautiful, very beautiful." Jun Moxie exclaimed in admiration. He suddenly reached out and touched Dugu Xiaoyi's pretty little face. He gently pinched it and exclaimed in admiration, "So smooth, so fragrant, ha ha." His clothes fluttered in the wind, and the sound of his footsteps gradually faded away. Hitman Jun pretended to be frivolous to cover up the panic in his heart. He almost ran away in defeat, and found that his heart was beating like a drum for the first time. I had a checkup this morning. Alas, food poisoning and influenza, my luck is really bad. I've won 2 prizes in one go. Chapter 241. Dugu Xiaoyi's heart was thumping wildly. She touched her cheek with one hand, feeling extremely shy. The next moment, she suddenly thought of something and said, "I'll go see you tomorrow." Her voice was very low, and she still didn't dare to raise her head. She didn't know if that enemy heard her or not. "Okay. I'll wait for you tomorrow." Jun Dashao's clear voice drifted with the wind and passed into the beautiful girl's ears. When the little girl raised her head, that handsome figure had already disappeared in front of her. Dugu Xiaoyi hurriedly got up and ran 2 steps to the door of the hall. She looked up and saw that that person was riding on a tall horse. He had just turned the corner of the street. His phoenix eyes were full of longing and intoxication. He looked like he was dreaming as he looked at the empty street. His face was full of a dreamy smile with a faint blush, which was indescribably moving. "That bad guy, humph. He actually pinched my face just now. Why didn't I pinch him? This young lady, humph, I'll definitely find him tomorrow. I'll definitely kick his butt a few times." Dugu Xiaoyi snorted happily. She tried her best to show an angry look, but her eyes couldn't help but curve like a crescent moon, revealing the true contentment of her master's shyness and happiness. Jun Moxie was single and leisurely returning home. He only felt an indescribable joy in his heart. It was a joy that he had never experienced in his 2 lives. His brain even felt a little dizzy. He obviously didn't drink, but he felt slightly tipsy. He obviously didn't hear any funny jokes, and he didn't want to laugh, but the corners of his mouth pulled up into a gentle smile. Bad bird. Could it be that I've been poisoned by this girl? Love is like a poisonous wine. Once you drink it, you'll never get the antidote. Oh, this is really a headache. In this world, although this body has been adjusted, but the physiological age seems to be just 16 years old. It should still be in the category of underage. In my previous life, it should be the 3rd year of middle school. Or at most, it should be no more than a teenager in the 1st year of high school. It seems that the girl is only this old, or a little younger, this is pure puppy love. Damn it, puppy love is wrong, this is a super case where the teacher will look for the parents. Jun Dashao's imagination ran wild all the way. His face was flushed with happiness, and the horse's hooves were hurried. The sound of the hooves was like that of a general returning from victory. He even felt that the hooves of the horse under him were especially melodious, as if he was writing a poem. Lightly dismounting from the horse, Jun Moxie stepped on the doorstep of his house with a face full of happiness, until a voice suddenly rang out, interrupting the happiness in his heart. In his heart, it was almost the wedding night. Everyone, please despise this guy. You can use recommendations, tips, monthly votes, 3,000 words to urge me to update, and so on. You don't have to give me face. Smash him to death. On one hand, he was thinking about puppy love, but on the other hand, he was thinking about the bridal chamber. Damn it. Brat, you're finally back. I've comprehended a few new moves today. Come and take a look at this, brat. The solitary eagle jumped out in an excited voice that sounded like he was presenting a treasure. After studying for a few days, he had finally comprehended a move. The solitary eagle was very excited. Jun Dashao, whose eyes were filled with the beauty of a flower and the moon, suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. His long hair fluttered in the wind, but he had a fiendish face that was as cold as ice. This contrast was really too big. Too big. Jun Dashao frowned and looked at the supreme eagle who had disturbed his daydream unhappily. In his heart, he had an impulse to kick the supreme eagle. Although he really wanted to rush forward, he forcibly restrained himself. He couldn't afford to offend this guy for the time being. I'm not free. I'm annoyed, don't mess with me. Jun Dashao frowned and his face darkened. He took a step into his room and closed the door with a bang. Supreme Ing, who followed after him, almost got his nose stuck in the crack of the door. What's going on? I clearly saw that he came back with a smile on his face. He looked so happy that he was about to faint. How come he immediately turned into a bastard when I opened my mouth to speak? The solitary eagle scratched his head in bewilderment. Today was supposed to be a very ordinary day. But because of an invitation card, it was no longer ordinary. The entire Tianxiang city was boiling over. It was boiling over. Anyone with a bit of status or a bit of wealth was discussing this aristocratic hall. What kind of place was it? How could it be so arrogant? It was a scalding silver invitation card with a golden plum blossom in full bloom on it. It was actually painted purely with the juice of melted gold. Every petal was vivid and lifelike, and even the stamens were clearly visible. Just this invitation card alone, even if it was just a cover, was already a valuable work of art. What was inside? The first thing that caught the eye when the title page was opened were 2 lines of inlaid golden characters. The first couplet read, "If you are destitute, please take another path." The second couplet read, "If you are worth millions, do not enter this door." The next page was a group of inlaid golden characters. It was truly a majestic sight. Great scholars talk and laugh, no commoners come and go. The refined men of the world are the best of the best. How can their basic necessities be mediocre? Playing the zither, reading the golden scriptures, listening to the celestial music, obtaining elegance. Tasting the heavenly tea, drinking the golden wine, one's life is not in vain. On the last page, there were only 8 big words. They were written in cursive script. What more could one ask for in life? The invitation clearly stated that anyone who wished to enter this door must be worth at least millions. This was undoubtedly a typical case of despising the poor and favoring the rich. Even the name was Aristocratic Hall. It was a name full of discrimination. But this vulgar and nouveau riche invitation card had the seals of 3 families on it. The Jun family's Jun Wui 3rd Master Jun's personal seal. The Tang family's seal. The most surprising thing was that there was also the seal of the Tianxiang Empire's only prince. Just these 3 seals alone could be said to be able to suppress people to the point that they couldn't breathe. Who would dare not go? Even the Murong family and the Dugu family couldn't afford to provoke these 3 monstrous families if they were to join forces. The Tianxiang city's aristocratic circles were abuzz with discussions about this matter. It had only been a day, but it had already stirred up a storm of public opinion. In the beginning, everyone was quite critical. They thought that the aristocratic hall was being a little too reckless. They thought that they despised the poor and coveted the rich. However, the public opinion had completely flipped in the end. Some of the people who had received the invitation were sighing. But, their faces were filled with pride. Because many people were indignant. Why didn't I receive an invitation? My net worth is more than millions. This invitation clearly states that they want to capture all the rich and nobles of Tianxiang City in one fell swoop. But, why isn't my name on it? Am I a head shorter than everyone else? Isn't this looking down on me? What kind of logic is this? So, they felt wronged and unwilling. From private discussions to public complaints, the people who had received the invitation were frightened and apprehensive at first. Then, they became proud and arrogant. Look, I'm a noble. I'm a great scholar. Do you understand? TSK, this is the evaluation of the Jun family, the Tang family, and the Wang family. Do you dare to disagree? What? You're richer than me. You have more money than me. Then, do you have an invitation? Identity ah. Identity ah. What proof of identity? It's very simple. You have an invitation. If you don't, then your net worth must be less than 1 million. Or perhaps you're just a commoner. This invitation had become the symbol of a noble's identity in a very short period of time. Some brothers would go out wearing pure white robes. They would directly insert the invitation card into their collar. They would walk around with an indifferent look on their faces. They would go wherever there were many people. They would hold their heads high and puff out their chests. They would walk with a swagger. They would look very cool. I'm a great scholar. I'm a great scholar. And, I'm very rich. As for those who didn't have an invitation card, they were unwilling to be outdone. They racked their brains and tried every possible way to get one. They stared at those who seemed to be inferior to them, yet they could still bring an invitation card and show it off in front of them. Their eyes were burning with desire. Many people didn't leave their homes. But, they would wantonly visit their relatives and friends after obtaining an invitation card. The most outrageous ones would visit more than 10 families in a single day. They would tire themselves out like dogs. But, they still wouldn't get tired of it. This wasn't too outrageous. Because, there were even more outrageous cases. It could even be said that the consequences would be far-reaching. This invitation card had caused a storm in Tianxiang City. Even the creator of this event, Jun Mo Xia, hadn't expected it. So much so that some people even had the guts to request an audience with Jun Mo Xia. They were willing to spend a lot of money in order to get an invitation card. Jun Wui didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had to beg his third uncle for help. This was too much. It had to be said that this world had always had a strict hierarchy. But, there had never been such a blatant and brazen act like this. The aristocratic hall had been created. Who didn't want to be famous in this world? Now that there was such a great opportunity to be above others, who wouldn't scramble like a flock of ducks? It was like 2 women in modern society. Even if they both wore the same gold ring, they would still intentionally or unintentionally compare which one was bigger and which one was smaller. Not to mention, the entire Tianxiang city's aristocratic circle had been stirred up by such a huge storm. The aristocratic hall, which was right across from the magnificent jewel hall, had immediately attracted the attention of the entire upper class of Tianxiang city. This auction house hadn't even opened yet, but it had already caused countless people to anxiously look forward to it. This was the first time such a sensation had occurred in Tianxiang City. Early in the morning, Dongfang shone the first rays of light. The doors of the aristocratic hall quietly opened. 2 teams of bodyguards came out in a line and stood in 2 neat rows at the main entrance. What greeted everyone's eyes was a courtyard full of fresh greenery. Bursts of fragrant flowers filled the air. Anyone who smelled it would feel intoxicated. Looking further inside, it was even more refreshing. Even the most picky person would be intoxicated by it, and would be unable to extricate themselves from it. Even in such a late autumn season, the courtyard was filled with flowers and plants. It was as if it was the height of spring. The huge courtyard was filled with all kinds of flowers and plants. Only a very elegant path was left in the middle of the courtyard. It seemed to be somewhat curved, and under the shade of the flowering trees on both sides, it seemed to have a transcendent feel to it. The winding and small path was only a few feet long. But, it gave people a feeling that they couldn't see the end of it. Just based on this point alone, it was already something that no other place could compare to. This was worthy of being called the aristocratic hall. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.